Okay, GBA, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines are open. Go for it.
Thank you, Matt, and welcome to everyone to the East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals meeting of May 16th, 2023. We have three scheduled public hearings this evening. I'm going to read the first one into the record. The first applicant is Jonathan and Linda Sawyer at 64 Squaw Road in Spring, Suffolk, tax map number 300-75-1-08. And the size and location is 14,135 square feet at 64 Squaw Road in Spring, Suffolk, tax map number 300-75-1-8. The description is to allow existing decking to be reconstructed as slate patio, a new spa equipment, relocated pool equipment, arbor over patio, walkways, relocated AC unit, outdoor shower, expanded driveway, and the clearing of beach vegetation to remain on a parcel of land containing tidal wetlands and beaches and within side yard lot line setbacks and outside the town's pyramid regulations. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the town code, and 15 variances are required for this application. 6 variants of 49.5 feet, 43 feet, 17 feet, 13 feet, 6 feet, and 3 feet are required from 255-430 of the town code to allow the existing patio to remain 50.5 feet, spa 57 feet, arbor 83 feet, spa equipment 87 feet, AC unit 94 feet, and the outdoor shower 97 feet respectively from the tidal wetlands where 100-foot setbacks are required. 1 variance of 20 feet is required from 255-430 of the town code to allow clearing 30 feet from tidal wetlands where a 50-foot setback is required. 3 variances of 15.7, 15.7, and 9.2 are required from 255-1110 of the town code to allow the existing spa to remain 4.3 feet, pool patio 4.3 feet, spa equipment 10.8 feet respectively from the southern side yard lot line where 20-foot setbacks are required. 1 variance of 0.2 feet is required from 255-1110 of the town code to allow the existing pool equipment to remain 19.8 feet from the eastern rear yard lot line where the 20-foot setback is required. 3 variances of 3.7 feet, 3 feet, and 2.1 feet are required from 255-1110 of the town code to allow the existing patio to remain 8.3 feet, arbor 9 foot, and AC unit 9.9 feet from side yard lot line setbacks where 12-foot setbacks are required. Finally, 1 variance of 7 inches is required to allow the existing arbor to remain 7 inches outside the town's pyramid regulations and any other relief necessary. The zoning district is A residence, Zone X flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. Council, do we have proper affidavit of service and posting?
We do. Pursuant to the Town of East Hampton Code, Section 255-9-23, we have certified mailings performed on May 5th, 2023, and a posting to the property on May 3rd, 2023, at least 10 days prior to today's public hearing.
Thank you. We typically have a report, and Member Savarese, who is not here, would be in her district. She submitted photos, so I think Tyler's going to walk us through the photos. And the first photo here is of the posting.
Sure. So you have the posting and the front of the existing residence on this lot. Then this would be like the front, I guess, left side if you're looking at it from the road, although the road is the rear yard on this lot. This here is where the pool equipment is located that one of the variances requested from. They need a variance from the road setbacks. That would be the pool equipment on the left side and then just the rest of the front of the house there. Walkway on the right side of the home or the north side of the home going out towards the water. And then, so that would be that side of the house over there that she came around and took a picture from the other side of the yard. This is the hot tub in need of relief. The patio here, which used to be decking in a slightly different configuration, which was changed to patio. Arbor and patio on the far side, the north side. I believe there's pictures of that and the rest of the back of the house. But obviously the swimming pool and the spa. Close-up picture of those. The side yard lot line is not far behind where she's standing right now. That's the arbor Small patio in need of relief from side yard. Rear of the house. The southern side of the rear of the house, or the water side of the house. Around the corner, so that photo previously was up from that of the other side. This is the pool equipment, the AC unit, and the outdoor shower. And then this is sort of turned around and looking the other direction, out towards the road. This is the walkway in need of NRSP, I believe. And then that's it.
Okay, thank you. John, come on up. Introduce
evening.
yourself.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, John Huber of Dayton, Voorhees, and Balsam here in East Hampton, attorneys for the applicant. I'd just like to start to confirm that there were two letters of support that were submitted back on June 30, 2022 with the application materials. Those letters of support were from the owners of the properties directly across the street, which would be on the east side of Squaw Road. The addresses for those supporting letters were 47 Squaw Road and 55 Squaw Road. Also, the owners, Jonathan and Linda Sawyer of this property, own the property also that abuts directly to the south under an entity named 60 Squaw Road LLC. And obviously, they support the application. I've asked Tyler to have up on the screen the survey that I submitted with the initial application materials. That survey was a Saskia survey dated October 4, 2021. And just so I wanted to give you multiple opportunities to see these materials and compare and contrast as I move through. I'll identify each of the exhibits that make up that packet I handed up to you. So the first exhibit is a summary of the relief that's requested in an attached worksheet. Obviously, we're seeking a natural resources special permit and 15 variances. So I wanted to quickly go through the survey. I'll use that as the roadmap for my presentation. So you can see each of the structures that we're talking about, their proximity on the property relative to the house, and so on. So exhibit 1 is the summary of relief requested in an attached worksheet. This is basically a verbal description and also on the spreadsheet that's attached to it, each of the components of the relief that we seek, and certainly based on the volume of material I've submitted. I don't expect us to dwell on any one of these. It was more for so that the board had a comprehensive set of resources at its disposal as you deliberate on this application. So exhibit 1 is the summary of requested relief. Exhibit 2 and 3 are here posted to my right. The exhibit 2, you have copies of that. This is the certificate of occupancy from December 15, 1998, based on a Wallbridge survey revised September 25, 1998. Below that is exhibit 3, which is certificate of occupancy 19527 dated August 27, 2002, based on Wallbridge survey dated August 16, 2002. This exhibit 3 is the last certificate of occupancy for this property. It's about 21 years old. So part of why we are seeking the extent of relief that we're seeking is when I was engaged by these folks, I very carefully examined every nook and cranny of the survey and compared it existing condition survey, the 2021 October 4 survey. And I said to them, look, we're going to go before the board. I want to completely seek relief to fully bring this property into compliance. So we're catching up on 21 years of what turns out to be actually very benign modifications, despite the fact that we seek 15
But
variants.
that spa is not a benign
I understand.
application. So, and so if they own the property to the south, that's just before the bend in the road, is that it? That's the south? That house, they renovated that house recently as well, did they?
There was some work to it. There is an application pending before the zoning board for that property separately. That application entails they'd like to
In other
replace.
words, they've been through the process, so they well know that you need a building permit to build something.
Yeah, maybe I should just get that out in the open. There's no question that this is basically a builder's error and an oversight. Basically, the way the project got started, the bulk of what they were doing were alterations to lawfully existing minor accessory structures. For example, there was a concrete walkway on the north side of the house. And during the momentum of the project, and I'm not making excuses, that's why we're here tonight, and I'm not gonna try and varnish over it. The work was done without permits. Hopefully, when I'm done with my presentation, you'll see as I show you each of the elements of relief that we seek, that certainly the spa on the south side of the pool is the most salient of the things that has to be addressed. However, I have a suggestion for the board. It's in part of the submissions. We have a boundary line setback agreement that the owners, they are willing to execute and record with the county clerk, so that in the future, anyone who's interested in purchasing 60 would be on both actual and constructive notice of what they are about to purchase, and they can enter into that transaction well-informed. Also, I have a copy of Exhibit 5. Well, let me just back up one second. Exhibit 4, which is all the way to my right, are before and after surveys. The top one is from February 28th, 2020, which was done right before they purchased the property. And then the survey, the lower one, is existing conditions. And I will be able to show you very quickly, expeditiously, that really the extent of what we're seeking approval for has in some ways actually made the property more compliant. But since this is all within the 150-foot jurisdiction for an RSP, much of it is actually minor accessory structures subject to the 100-foot setback. So Exhibit 5 is the ZBA determination dated February 7th, 1984. And finally, Exhibit 6 is a summary of my engagement with the New York State DEC. I submitted materials with them simultaneously with the submission I made to this board on June 30 of 2022, almost a year ago, and have been working very favorably with the New York State DEC. And basically, their compliance determination on this property is that about 120 square feet of vegetation. I don't know how well my laser pointer holds up against that screen, but in this area where this is, it says limits of clearing, the New York State DEC determined that only about 120 square foot of vegetation had been altered. And what the property owners had done, and you can see on the 2021 survey, Tyler, if you might pull that one up for me. The clearing, they didn't actually clear. What they did was they reconfigured the vegetation, and they just made it not stick out as far into the lawn, and they relocated it here up against the northern property. So I would suggest to the board, the application is framed so that we sort of variance for that reconfiguration of the vegetation. In lieu of that variance, if the board decides as a condition of approval that you would just like to see that vegetated buffer supplemented to the north of the limit or the east, landward of the existing vegetation area, we'd be happy to do
But
that.
what is the overlay of that easement or that buffer relative to the previous zoning board determination?
It's nearly identical, and
I'm sure
on,
Tyler will be able to testify to
yeah,
that
and
too.
these exhibits that you have, for example, the Exhibit 3, which is the CO from August 27, 2002, delineates on it the vegetation area required by the ZBA, and was ultimately, a CO was issued for that. So if the board decides, look, we'll approve this subject to, you need to get some revegetation back in there, we're completely open to that. And I think it's a nice way to keep the property compliant with the code. Okay, I've also submitted a comprehensive memorandum in support of the application. It covers all of the relevant material, the criteria for the natural resources special permit, the criteria for the different area variances. So to save time tonight, I know that we're limited on time. I won't get into the real guts. I'll definitely talk about the spa on the south side of the pool. And I think the other things are probably the AC unit and the spa equipment on the south side of the house.
What about the pergola?
The pergola? Absolutely, I could talk about that.
I mean, they built that, right?
Yes, sir, that was existing. I'm not existing, that was built after the fact. And I can talk
Okay.
about the aspects of that that are not compliant. Okay, so moving on. The seeking natural resources special permit to maintain in their existing locations 5 minor accessory structures not exceeding 150 square feet. These structures are all situated landward of the existing in-ground swimming pool that had been in place since the 1980s. Pursuant to the zoning board determination dated February 7, 1984, under the caption in the matter of the application of Richard D. and Susan C. Levin. A copy of that ZBA determination is submitted as part of Exhibit 5 that you have. Each of the structures in question is depicted on the Saskis survey, revised October 4, 2021, which was submitted to the board on June 30, 2022, along with applicant's application and supporting materials. It's also, Tyler has it up on the screen, and it's also the lower survey on the board here. Moving clockwise on that survey from the house's northwest corner, these structures are as follows. You have the arbor that is at the house's northwest corner. That's also depicted in applicant's photo exhibit packet, photos 11, 12, and 14. The swimming pool equipment and related enclosure near the garage's northeast corner, which would be up here, that was present on the site when the owners purchased the property on March 26, 2020. We're seeking to legalize that today. That is in photo exhibit packet, photo 17, 18, and 20. And all of these are in hearing exhibit 1 that I've given to the board, so you can look at that as you feel necessary. The swimming pool equipment and the enclosures were existing at the time they purchased the property. It shows up on February 28th, 2020 Saskis survey. That's part of hearing exhibit 4. They did not create this unobtrusive condition, but seek ZBA review of and approval for it. There's also a slate walkway on the house's south side, over here, right there. And that was, that's in applicant's photo exhibit packet, photos 2 through 4. As indicated on the February 28th, 2020 Saskis survey, that area had been occupied by the pervious stone driveway, which they reconfigured and now is on the east side adjacent to the garage. The air conditioning condensing unit, the spa equipment, and the concealment plantings located near the house's southwest corner over here is depicted in applicant's photo exhibit packet, photos 3 through 7. As indicated on the February 28th 2020 Saskis survey, that air conditioning unit had previously been situated over here on the southern property boundary, and they relocated it closer to the house to make it more compliant. The spa and the slate surround on the south side of the swimming pool are also part of the natural resources permit relief that we seek. Those are depicted in the exhibit, the photo exhibit packet, photos 8 through 10. Applicants also request natural resources special permit to maintain minor alterations to 6 lawfully pre-existing conditions. Those were all covered by the certificate of occupancy 1998 and also 2002, and they show up on the supporting surveys. Again, moving clockwise on the October 4, 2021 Saskia survey. They replaced a former concrete walkway on the house's north side with the existing slate on mulch walkway, which is depicted here. They replaced a former concrete walkway and slate patio on the house's east side with grass. That's depicted in the existing conditions are depicted in photos 16, 17, and 19. They reconfigured the pervious stone driveway, which had been situated adjacent to the garage at the house southeast corner, as depicted on the February 28th, 2020 Saskia survey. The driveway in its prior configuration had been fully authorized by the two certificate of occupancies that constituted Exhibits 2 and 3. The driveway's current configuration is depicted in applicant's photo exhibit packet photos 1 and 2. They also reconfigured the outdoor shower deck on the house's south side, which is depicted here. They removed approximately 7 square feet of that, and part of the natural resource special permit that they asked, they'd like to put a modest vertical enclosure around that shower area for privacy. That area is depicted in applicant's photo packet, photo 4. They also replaced 1,263 square feet of wooden decking that extended southward from the house and extended around the swimming pool. That deck had deteriorated. It was made of wood, and it was replaced consistent with its prior dimensions with the new slate patio, which is beneath the arbor and adjacent to the house and surrounding the swimming pool and the spa. In replacing the deck, they did open up some grass between the slate patio adjacent to the house and around the pool. So there's a grass strip there. And we discussed the minimal configuration of the beach vegetation. Really, that's if the board wants to grant that variance for that clearing. It says 20 feet of clearing. Basically, the clearing had been done previous, and the property was revegetated pursuant to the zoning board's 1997 zoning approval. It's just that the applicants reconfigured that vegetation, moved some of it over here. If the board sees fit, we'd be willing to revegetate another additional buffer. The DEC said you don't need to revegetate, you can just leave it and let it return to its natural state. And that material is in the last exhibit that I submitted, number 6. I cover that to demonstrate for you all good faith in dealing with the DEC. I haven't received the DEC's, basically they issue an order of consent for work that's been done without permits. They don't give permits for work that was already done. I don't see that they will be imposing any
They
fines.
wouldn't have given a permit if this was proposed to have been done. How do you go in with this survey and expect the building department to approve it? It would have been denied. So you're asking us now to approve it, and that's going to be problematic, is it not?
Well, no, again, just for purposes of having a thorough application, I included the reconfiguration of the vegetation. If the board decides in its wisdom, you'd rather see about, it's going to be about between 120 square feet and maybe 250 square feet of revegetation. We could put indigenous or native species there, and we could address it that way as well. I understand the board's concern about vegetation adjacent to the wetlands, and we're happy to.
No, our concern is precedent as well. This is not just an NRSP. These are many area variances. So I think setting aside the previous thing, the new stuff too, if you look just at that, these are quite a few area variances that we have to look at and the precedent for allowing it. And I'm not sure a letter to an owner sets the nexus for approvals for that. for a future buyer.
I understand your concerns about setting precedent, and I would not in good conscience ask you to set a precedent that I think would not hold water. So in this case, if you decide you don't want to make a precedent about the variance itself, then as a condition of approval for the NRSP, you can say that you want that revegetation. You want it revegetated with the sufficient square footage.
But
And
the revegetation is a requirement of a previous zoning board application of determination, is it not? So that wouldn't be considered mitigation.
Well, it would be then, again, I respect the board's authority. I'm not trying to be argumentative. If you say you want it revegetated consistent with the prior board approval, that's one way to approach it.
That's not a give back in any way. You have a previous judgment that established the line. I'm looking at two surveys, one from 2020, one from 2021. There's a significant change in the amount of vegetation there between the two. Now, you had stated that the current ownership happened right after this February 28, 2020 survey. So we're seeing something in front of us here that shows that there's been significant change in a very short period of time. This property hasn't been owned for 30 or 40 years, where people might have an excuse in saying, I didn't understand the zoning. This is a recent purchase. Upon that purchase, they should be made aware of what the zoning rules are and how they're going to restrict the future development. Then you come to us and we see this spa that's put much too close to the property line. We have variances all over this whole project here. And this was done intentionally. Now, you said that there was a builder error. I'd like to see the definition of builder error when an owner must have to approve the drawings, have to approve the concept, and move forward with it. There's got to be money deposited, things happen. This isn't a couple of paving stones someplace along the side of a garage. This is a significant structure put in against any kind of possible expectation that would be approved by this or any other board. This is something that's a major movement. That and the vegetation and the fact that it's a recent ownership tells me that this was done rather indiscriminately. And that you're asking us to now provide an approval for something that we can't predict exactly what the board would have said, but a board would have been very skeptical about approving some of these things that you're proposing to us at this time. The minor ones are still going to take great concern from us, and we have to look at them individually. But the fact that this spa sits the way it does and that you took back vegetation that was previously determined should have been in place are pretty serious items. And I think you're taking it very lightly to say to us, well, you'll revegetate. You can't, you're not offering us anything. You have to revegetate and go back to a previous agreement. This is not an area that can stay the way it is. So two things have happened here that are very significant. One is you've taken back vegetation that were part of a previous approval. And the second is you put in this spa in a location that you know is problematic, and you know that. You can see what the problems are when you come in front of us with this kind of application. These are two major issues there that we have to deal with. And again, I'm not discounting the other ones. Everything's going to be looked at. But this jumps right off the survey at you. And again, we're not talking about a long period of time. We're talking about a short period of time here between ownership and the completion of this project as we see it in front of us.
Understood.
Problem for you.
And yeah, I want to make very, very clear that nothing that I say to you tonight or in the future will ever try to minimize the how difficult it is when a contractor does work without permits. I am in no way advocating that, and I've devoted my career to working with the board to find ways to bring these properties compliant in a way that the town can be proud of, that the code has been enforced. I'm not making any excuses. My job in this situation is to come in and try to get a solution that the board can live with. And in this case, if there's anything I can do, I have some suggestions about how. If we can keep the spa, I will get to that in my presentation. It's not too far off, but all I can do is offer a suggestion. And if the board finds that satisfactory, then I think there are elements of that proposal that would make the board comfortable that you're not setting a precedent that doesn't hold water.
Right, but as well, I think that we're also expected to give deference to a previous determination. This property has gone under scrutiny in the past, So when you do something, when something like this out, if it came to the board or it went to the building department, in both cases, it would have gotten turned back to you and said, no, right? Or not to you, the applicant. I still think the responsibility to adhere to the code is the owner, not just a builder, right?
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I will get to these, well, this parcel is grossly undersized. I think it requires under the code 160 feet frontage on Squaw, it has 75. And each time that the zoning board has examined this property, it has made that same point, that these folks are really constrained about what they can and cannot do on the property. When I get to the discussion of the 1984 ZBA determination, there's two quick passages in there that I'd like to read to you for the record, and it specifically addresses that treatment. Okay, so, Mr. Johan, may I proceed? I want
Sure.
to make sure we sufficiently address the subject.
But go ahead,
Thank
keep
you,
going.
sir. Okay. So we also request variances. There are 6 from the 100-foot wetland setback. These requested variances are a 49.5-foot variance to allow the slate patio around the pool to remain where its wood predecessor once stood, 50.5 feet landward of the tidal wetlands. So the wooden deck was removed and the slate patio was installed in exactly the same location. That distance from the edge of the wetlands to the western edge of the pool patio remains consistent with the distance that's depicted in the previous certificates of occupancy. We need a 43-foot variance to allow the spa situated at the southern end of the swimming pool to remain 57 feet landward of the tidal wetlands. As you can see, the spa is landward of the pool itself, which had been there since the 1980s. A 17-foot variance to allow the arbor situated at the house's northwest corner to remain 83 feet landward of the tidal wetlands. The arbor is situated in the vicinity where the patio had been previously, and there used to be also the concrete walkway that had a 90-degree angle at that corner of the house. That was all abated, so the patio atop which the arbor sits is actually further away from that northern boundary. We need a 13-foot variance to allow the spa equipment.
I'm sorry, are you saying that the arbor sits in the footprint of the old deck? It doesn't appear that way.
Are we sure that, I thought that deck was
I
added?
can, if we look at the exhibit,
Doesn't look that way.
Squared off a little bit. There's a give and take here.
right, so this is what's on the screen now is the February 28th, 2020 survey that was
Right.
prepared just before the applicants purchased the property. And the concrete walkway that had been here came at a 90-degree angle and down this way. That was all removed, and the existing patio that's there now is approximately here. So the arbor is sitting on top of that patio, which is further from the northern property line than that concrete walkway had been previously.
Where was the pool equipment on that
It's an
survey?
excellent question. Despite my forensic examination of all these, so this is the February
The one we're looking at,
28th.
right.
Pool equipment is up here, so it was existing on the property at the time they purchased it. Previous surveys, for example, the ones that support the two certificates of occupancy, I've been unable to locate the pool equipment on those surveys, so I don't, it's one of the few things.
I think there was a time when they didn't require it to be on surveys. So.
So we know it was on the property because they had the pool. It's just that after all these years, it first shows up on a survey as of February 28th, 2020. Okay, so we're seeking a variance to allow the AC condensing unit on the south side of the house to remain 94 feet from the edge of the wetlands. Obviously, it's landward of the pool that had been there for a very long time. And then a 3-foot variance to allow the outdoor shower to remain 97 feet landward from the tidal wetlands. Again, that shower shows up on the previous certificates of occupancy going back to 98 and 2002. And it's 97 feet from the tidal wetlands, well landward of the existing pool. We also seek a 20-foot variance from the 50-foot wetland clearing regarding the reconfiguration of the wetlands. The board, it appears to me, will seek that they revegetate at least as much as was reconfigured, if not some additional. And certainly, as long as the number is reasonable under the circumstances, we can revegetate. Prior to 1997, the property had been fully cleared, and then in 97, pre-existing clearing, and then in 97, the zoning board said, look, you have to revegetate, and they did. The previous owners did. 3 variances are required from the southern side yard swimming pool setbacks. For the spa and the slate surround, that's 4.3 feet from the southern property boundary. A 9.2-foot variance to allow the spa equipment near the house's southwest corner to remain 10.8 feet at its closest point from the southern boundary. So what I had submitted is the boundary line agreement that they'd be willing to sign and record with the county clerk. Another thing that we can do, if the board is willing to consider allowing the spot to remain, we can put possibly a 4-foot fence adjacent to it and then put some concealment plantings there. And that would provide some sound attenuation, which I believe is the underlying policy for having the setbacks. The reason that the spot is located where it is because there's a bathroom and a changing room here inside the house in close proximity to where the spot is located. And it's also in close proximity to the outdoor shower, so that people could rinse off before and after they get into the spa. And that was sort of the benefits that the applicants seek, is to have a reasonable enjoyment of their property based on the existing conditions, the layout of the house and the pool.
So either the applicants want it there for a reason or it's builder error.
I'm sorry, what was?
Either the applicants had a reason for putting it there or it's builder error.
Well, when I say builder error, I'm not talking about that the contractor measured incorrectly a matter of half a foot or whatever. The other reason why the spot is located where it is. To the north is property owned by the town of East Hampton. It's vacant land. Putting the spot on that side was clearly not appropriate. Putting the spa here on the east side of the pool would have created a bottleneck in the area of the slate patio, which is where they entertain. So the spa in its current location was the most viable, practical location for it, particularly when in proximity to the changing room and the bath inside that part of the house. We also need a 6-foot variance to allow the slate swimming pool surround to remain 14 feet at its closest point from the southern property boundary. That 14 feet is the exact distance that the previous deck was from the southern boundary based on the certificates of occupancy that are exhibits 2.
So why is it noticed?
I'm sorry.
Why is it noticed?
Well, because they replaced the wooden
it's
decking
part of-
that
it
was
might be
there,
part of the NRSP.
and they replaced it
It's an
with
interesting-
slate
okay.
instead.
All right.
Okay, so those are the 3 variances from the side yard setback. Oh, I'm sorry. 1, 2.4 inch or 0.2 of a foot variance from the 20-foot eastern yard swimming pool setback to allow this pool equipment to remain up here. Now, that very well may have been contractor error, because the pool equipment itself is 19.9 inches, the enclosure is 19.8. So that's a very minimal variance to seek to maintain that pool equipment in its location. And it's been there for some time. At any rate, I noticed it on the survey and I wanted to get a clean bill of health for these folks. Now, 3 variances from the 12-foot side yard setback for the northern boundary. There's a 3.7-foot variance to allow the patio at the house's northwest corner to remain 8.3 feet. As I explained previously, they abated the concrete walkway that had been there and then installed the patio here further from where the concrete walkway had been located, but still within that side yard setback. And then the arbor itself is 9 feet from the northern property line. And then we need a 2.1-foot variance to allow the air conditioning condensing unit on the house's south side that had been relocated by the applicants from the southern property boundary up against the house. And that's got the concealment plantings adjacent to it. We need a 7-inch variance from the pyramid law to maintain the arbor where it's located because it's 9 feet 7 inches tall, but it's 9 feet from the northern property boundary. The reason it was installed in that location is it's just outside the slider here. They barbecue under there. It shows up in photographs. The top of that arbor has louvered ceiling that's operated with an electric motor so that when they're cooking and if there's a lot of smoke, they can open the louvers and ventilate that area. So this area depicted in the triangle is the pyramid variance that they seek to maintain that in that location. And then we'll also, as part of the more omnibus relief, in the event in the future, there is fencing here. If we need to, once we apply for a building permit in furtherance of whatever the board's determination is, we may need to reconfigure some of this fencing to fit with what the building department requires for pool fencing. So rather than go through this process and apply again for an NRSP to locate whatever that pool fencing is, we're asking for that authorization now to go in and install whatever pool fencing may be required.
Is that there now?
I apologize.
Is the pool fencing there now?
Well, the applicants own, their sense was that this serves as their pool fencing. There is a fence here now. In the event that the building department says that's not sufficient, you need to move that landward, then the board, if you decide to, that you'd like to grant that relief now, I will not have to go through this NRSP application because we're doing that now and I gave the approval to relocate that fence in advance.
What's the height of that fencing today?
It's about 4 feet.
It goes around the entire property, it looks like?
Yes. Yeah, it actually runs here, it's a 90-degree angle, and it continues on 60 square, and it comes up which would be the southern boundary of that property. And that is part of the application that's pending for that property before this board. So, I explain all the criteria for the area variances and the natural resource special permit in my memorandum in support of the application. The board's been very patient. I can suffice it to say that the natural resources permit, the special permit relief that we seek, there's been no, and again, I understand the board's concern about the revegetation, that aside. Except for that, any of the other natural resource special permit relief that we need relates to minor accessory structures subject to the 100-foot setback. And those have absolutely no adverse environmental detriment. It was all work done in areas that were disturbed decades ago. So as far as the natural resources permit and the policy underlying that to protect the wetlands and environmentally sensitive areas, there's absolutely no adverse consequences to all of the work that was done landward of the pool. Obviously, the board will consider how you want to deal with the revegetation. I'm glad to offer that up to get it back to where it was as of 97 approval. And then if the board wants to see additional revegetation, again, within reason, it's a small property. As a condition of approval, I think that's reasonable. As far as the area variances, we know what those criteria are. I understand the board's concern about the spot. It is self-created. That in and of itself is not dispositive, considering we look at the entire balancing test. I would suggest to the board that, the very important point, final point I'd like to make is I would like to, in the 1984 zoning decision, a few pages in, made some very important comments, and I thought it was important to just read that into the record. Okay, so I'm reading from paragraph 14C of the ZBA's February 7, 1984 determination that approved the pool. At that time, the property owners wanted to put a diving board here where the spot is now located. And at that time, the ZBA said, certainly we take notice of the fact that both of the most immediately affected neighbors wrote letters supporting the application. Those particular people will not always be the owners, and in all likelihood, the life of the swimming pool and the deck improvements will exceed the time that all three parcels remain in their present ownership. While these owners may have no objection, we cannot permit them to speak for their successors, at least without a covenant or other device to put a purchaser clearly on notice that he, at the time they said he, we'll make that gender neutral, is buying less solitude and quiet than the law presumes. And then there was some other language in there. The board acknowledged that the property is smaller than what the code would require, and that the folks who own it deserved some flexibility. Obviously, they have the reduced side yard setback down to 12 feet. But again, the form that I prepared as a draft of what that boundary line agreement would be to put the world on notice, to avoid that situation where a buyer is caught unaware, is in the application packet that we submitted in June. And certainly if the board is willing to explore that or have additional language in that document, I imagine council and I would discuss that and come up with an agreement that everyone can live with. I would be happy to entertain any questions.
Do you have any questions?
No, don't have anything yet. You handed us this packet
Thank you.
tonight. when we
Thank you, John. That
typically
was-
Request a week,
Yeah.
of course.
Well, we're gonna thank you for a thorough
Thank you.
presentation. I think we'll turn it over to the planning department at this time.
John, those are for demonstrative purposes only, right? The stuff that you have on the
Yeah,
board.
you already have all of
Perfect.
these as
Okay, great.
exhibits.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening, Tyler Borsek for the Planning Department.
Tyler, do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I'll try and be as brief as I can since it was gone over very thoroughly. And I thank you for that. So the parcel is located within the Harbor Protection District abutting 3 Mile Harbor. 3 Mile Harbor is a New York State significant fish and wildlife habitat and a component of the Peconic Estuary Critical Environmental Area. These wetlands provide all the benefits associated with high-quality wetlands, including the provision of diverse, high-quality plant and wildlife habitats, nursery areas for commercially important shellfish and finfish, the attenuation of floodwaters, the removal of pollutants prior to groundwater or surface water recharge, and the opportunities for scientific research, education, and aesthetic appreciation. Limiting the size of development, protecting natural vegetation buffers, and increasing the setbacks from the town natural resources will help limit pollution impacts associated with upland development and water runoff. Without such mitigation, the proposed improvements could influence pollutant runoff into the harbor, having an adverse impact on the ecosystem of 3 Mile Harbor. The current application is requesting to legalize several non-conforming structures which were constructed, newly constructed or relocated without proper permits being in place by the applicant sometime after 2020 when the applicant purchased the property. Several of these structures may be appropriate given the ZBA's past approvals of similar structures, but there are aspects of the proposed application which are, in the opinion of the planning department, not appropriate for the constraints of the parcel and represent poor precedent and are likely to have negative impacts on the surrounding natural features. The construction of a new spa adjacent to the existing swimming pool, which is significantly non-conforming to both tidal wetland setbacks as well as side yard lot line setbacks, is a poor precedent to set in an area of very similarly constrained properties. The spa is located only 4.3 feet from the southern side yard lot line where a 20-foot setback is required. Spa is also only located 57 feet from tidal wetlands where a 100-foot setback is required. The newly constructed spa creates significant negative impacts on neighboring parcels as well as on the environmental conditions on the property, with such significant variances needed in order for it to remain. If the board felt that the spa was an appropriate addition to the parcel, there are certainly more conforming locations which could have been proposed that meet better setbacks and reduce the impacts on neighbors and on wetlands. Relocating the spa landward of the swimming pool between the house and the pool would better meet the NRSP and variance standards compared to the location it is constructed in. Similarly, the spa equipment is located just south of the residence, also well within side yard lot line setbacks. For a portion of the proposed variances, they are either relocated further from wetlands or they are replacements, like place, like kind. One of the largest pieces of reconstruction was the stone patio. It's mostly in the same configuration as the existing decking was. They reconstructed as a stone patio and also extended it slightly further to the north, which is where the arbor is located. In addition to that is the AC unit on the south side of the residence, and a reconstruction of the existing driveway. They removed a section of the driveway on the south side of the residence and moved it essentially adjacent and made the existing driveway slightly wider. Again, all minor changes to the existing layout overall, as well as the swimming pool equipment in the front, within, which is the rear yard lot line in this case, but along the road frontage. On top of that, the applicants have also cleared approximately 5 feet in depth of vegetation along the wetland buffer, which was established as part of the 1997 ZBA approval on the parcel. This vegetation plays a critical role in the attenuation of runoff from the parcel and surrounding areas prior to water recharging into the surface waters of 3 Mile Harbor. The planning department feels that the clearing variance request should be denied and that the additional 5 feet of vegetative buffer should be reestablished and possibly expanded if the board feels that additional mitigation is needed to offset the impacts from the requested improvements. This vegetative buffer helps reduce impacts from upland development, improves the water quality of 3 Mile Harbor, and also provides potential upland habitat for the salt marsh to migrate into as sea levels continue to rise. Any addition to a revegetation of the buffer, the board should discuss if they feel that any additional mitigation measures are appropriate for what, if any, aspects of the application are approved. A possible scenic easement over the required buffer would help to further protect that vegetation in perpetuity. Other than that, I can answer any questions you might have.
Just for clarification, the amount of decking on the seaward side,
Yes.
you think that's more or less than the previous?
It's probably roughly equal. Right now, there's
or not more. So it's
right. They were connected. Between the decking and the pool was connected. Now there's probably 4 or 5 foot separation between the two.
right.
And then they added some to the north side.
And then they squared off that one.
Yeah, they squared off. So it's maybe about equal. It might be slightly less.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Tyler?
No, I just was wondering if they have an old cesspool.
Yeah.
The sanitary is in the what would be the rear yard, but yeah, it's got a leaching. It's got a tank and leaching pools. It's in the what would be the rear yard, but it's on the front.
They haven't offered to upgrade this sanitary.
And with all the impervious surfaces replacing the deckings, is there a additional buffer that you might recommend or suggest to offset that?
For the work that was proposed or the work that was done?
No, I think the question is, you had previously wood decking, now there's.
Right, right.
Now there's impervious.
Right, how much additional vegetation based
Does
on the
that
work that
increase
was
the
done?
runoff at all toward the?
It certainly has a higher runoff coefficient. It's, decking is somewhat permeable because it has, slats in between, but and a slate patio has, obviously is potentially a 100% runoff. How much additional vegetation to offset that is difficult to try and come up with a number on the spot. They're at 30 feet now, roughly. Additional 5 feet is what they had, so they are 35, maybe another 5 feet on top of that to get to 40. The Midtown code minimum is 50, but I don't think enough work was done to justify eliminating that nonconformity. So I'd say maybe an additional 5 feet on top of going back to what was already there.
I have another
Would be
question.
fair.
Does the shower have a dry well? Do you know?
It does not. It's one of the things that we noted
Do you know? it? Yeah.
was adding a drywall for the outdoor shower.
Any other questions?
No, I'm good.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
Questions for the board? John, you can come up if you have any quick closing remarks. Do we need to, we have the submittal, do we need to keep the record open for anything and why? So my question is, we have the submittal. We don't need to. We can close the record, I think, tonight.
So
Closing the hearing.
make a
Yeah,
decision.
Hope, are you signing in this?
I think he went through it very thoroughly.
Yes, I have it.
Yes, thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
Before you,
yeah, sure.
I'm sorry, we have to go to the public.
Sure.
So is there anybody in the public that would like to address this application? Not anybody on the phone that would like to address this application?
You have 0 callers. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, John, come on up.
okay, so as a condition of approval, if the board wants to require a dry well adjacent to or beneath the outdoor shower, it's fine. The only other point I wanted to make, perhaps I didn't make, I said that all the work that was done landward of the pool does not emit any kind of exhaust or anything that could be considered noxious. So it really is, all of those were benign and not adverse to the policy underlying natural resources special permit. Thanks for being so patient.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you, Tyler. I guess I'll make a motion. Therefore, I make a motion in the application of Jonathan and Linda Sawyer at 64 Squaw Road in Springs, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-75-1-8, to close the public hearing.
I'll second it.
Concur.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, next. Next, we have Shaggy Shag LLC at 774 Montauk Highway, Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-49-4-5. The size and location is 2,681 square foot and 774 Montauk Highway, Montauk, map number 174, Fort Pond Business Section 1, Block 17, Lot 3, in Montauk. The description is an appeal of the building inspector's determination dated September 5th, 2022, regarding the use of the existing restaurant. Appellants seek to reverse the building inspector's determination that the restaurant is being operated in a manner that would change the use definition to a nightclub. The relief sought is an appeal of the building inspector's determination dated September 5th, 2022. Zoning district is CB, Central Business Zone X Flood Zone, and the secret class is Type 2. Council, do we have proper affidavit of service and posting?
We do pursuant to section 255-9-23 of the Town of East Hampton Code. We have both a service of certified mailings and a posting to the property performed on April 28th, 2023, which is 10 days prior to today's public hearing.
Thank you. And then, Steve, was there a proper posting? then?
No, I didn't see a posting.
I didn't either.
Okay, well, we have this,
We got that.
okay, yeah, pictures? Okay. Thank you. So this is an an appeal where the town will go first with their presentation, I believe. And is it Ann or is it, okay, Ann, you coming first?
Can I ask one question not related to Blair?
Sure.
This is just John Target for the applicant. We're continuing the record from last time? Is that?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
everything that was said last time is incorporated into this record?
Correct.
Ann Glennon from the East Hampton Town Building Department, Principal Building Inspector.
Ann, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
First of all, I do want to make comment that there is another interpretation that was done March 30th, 2023, which it wasn't in that. I just want to make sure that we're all understanding that I did change another question came back from the attorney. I did respond to it stating that, yes, there was music in Shagwan. There was also possibly dancing within the bar area. I don't have, there's nothing in our records that I can say anything more than it was a bar and a restaurant. So to interpret the code in a way, they're not asking me if it's a nightclub. There is nothing in the middle for the code. It's either a nightclub or it's a restaurant. I do concede, and in that interpretation, the bar area, there was music back in the day. And it was always very limited in people that were in there. The other stuff that they submitted to us was more like any other restaurant in the area that had event permits, showers, parties, holidays, to that fact. And I have Dave Brown here so that he can go further back because his records go much deeper from all their inspections over the years. So I would like to let him come up and talk.
Thank you. Dave, you want to introduce yourself? And
Yes, David Brown, East Hampton Town Fire Marshal's Office, Chief Fire Marshal.
thank you. You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Proceed.
Okay. I was asked to come in and talk about some of our records from the Fire Marshal's Office and what the actions were that we took this past summer. Again, I've been a fire marshal since 2004. I've been chief since 2011. I've visited the Shagwan many occasions, and I am the one who wrote the first violations this last summer. I did not cite Shagwan for dancing. I did not cite Shagwan for having music. Okay, I've never refused that right or even written them ever for dancing or music. Okay, I have seen that. I'm going to go through some of the points in this letter that Mr. Tarbert had forwarded to us about the Shagwan for allowing people to dance with live music. Despite overwhelming evidence that live music and dancing, yes, I admit that. There is evidence they were dancing and there was music there. He compares this whole situation to the movie Footloose. I don't know if that's what they teach you as a defense in law school, but when I went to the fire academy, the movies I saw were the unbridled pictures of, listen.
Yes,
Yes, and this is what I'm telling you right now, is you can have, yep, okay, I got you. Enough. All right, I personally came upon an overcrowded issue in here, in the Shagwan, that I counted over 200 people, all right? Comparing it to Footloose, again, that's offensive. After going to Fire Academy and seeing the pictures of the Station nightclub, from overcrowding nightclubs, human nature, when you go into a place, you come in that door, that's where I'm going out. Same thing that they found with this nightclub situation is people, when they go into the nightclub, they want to go out the same way they came in. That's what they're familiar with. That's what they know they're getting out of that place. And that's where the bottleneck happened. And that's where all the bodies came from. All right. So I take this completely serious. Again, no one is trying to stop them from having music or dancing. Okay. Moving inside the tables and chairs. As Mr. Tarbett has put in this letter, that's the evidence of their saying that they have, that they did this. Yes, I've seen them move the tables and chairs aside in the bar area. It's the first move in. I have never seen them remove the tables completely from the building and put outside. I've never witnessed them removing the tables and chairs from the dining room in the center, okay? Once you do that, you increase the occupancy numbers, okay? And that's where it becomes more of a nightclub, okay? From looking at the numbers that they had originally as a restaurant, and we'll go back to my oldest record I have for Shagwan is 1977. Permit for a restaurant, okay? That's the oldest I have. That's the start of my office. Before that, we have no records, okay? And at that time, it was between, the numbers fluctuated between 33 to 38 tables in the dining room, and also in the bar room, it fluctuated anywhere from 40 to 48, somewhere around in there. But through the years, as they move things out, furniture comes in, different furniture and fixtures are in there, okay? And that brings me to the fact that once you get up to 100 people, by the code, you have to have a sprinkler system, okay? That's when it becomes like a nightclub. And again, the oldest book I have in my office, copyright 1960, well, going all the way back to the 60s, was required to have a sprinkler system if you went over 100 people. Okay, I take this so seriously. My observations since 2004, I've seen, again, tables and chairs pushed aside in the barroom area. I've seen dancing and I've seen music. I admit that. I saw it before that when I was a teenager. I went there as a teenager and I saw dancing and I saw the music. I can give you an affidavit, but again, my affidavit is also going to tell you that I've never seen them remove the tables and chairs from the center and fill this place up with so many people. And that's the dangerousness of it, is filling this place up and not being able to get out. Okay, and if sprinkler systems are not.
I'm going to ask nobody to comment during the presentation, please.
Okay. By allowing the bar to set aside the tables and chairs for music and dancing, it is a recognition of the pre-existing non-conforming use. Okay, the charges stem from an expansion of this use by spreading into the adjoining dining area. You're increasing the non-conforming condition and you're increasing the numbers in this bar. And now it mirrors a nightclub once you go over that 100 people. And again, I went in there and counted over 200. So this should not be going on. And again, that's evidence of it being a nightclub, filling it with that many people. Any questions for me?
Well, question right first off is the first time you cited them was a year ago in 2022?
Yes.
Do you know if they've ever been cited for overcrowding in the past?
I'm not sure. There may have been a couple of other instances, but never like this. Never like this. And again, I've never written them, or no one in my office has ever written them for music or dancing. And I've seen there, witnessed music and dancing. But just, again, in the one area, not throughout the entire building. Could it have gone on without me there? I can't be there all the time or see everything.
You testified that you witnessed them pushing tables aside,
Yes.
but you also testified that you've never seen them tables put on the outside.
Correct.
Did you
happened.
personally see that?
This previous year, yes, 2022. They were taking the tables and chairs completely out of the building, not just setting them
And
aside.
this is when?
It was
what-
July of 2022,
Okay.
that weekend.
What if they put in a sprinkler system?
That would increase their occupancy numbers. I believe up to somewhere around 158 to 160. Approximately 160 would bring it up to with a sprinkler system.
So when you did cite them, you went in and cited them for a violation, and at that time you made an estimate that for 200 people in this space.
I counted with a counting device as I went through.
Yeah, so that's your comment, is that you've seen 200 people there on an occasion when the tables were pushed back.
No, when the tables and chairs were completely removed, not when they were pushed back.
Okay.
When they were pushed back, they were keeping it, it was keeping it light. They were keeping it within their numbers.
Okay, but you said they pushed it back only in the bar area.
Correct. That's what I witnessed. Again, that's only what I witnessed.
When they took them outside, they took them from the bar and the restaurant?
Yes.
To be clear, that the code you held up that goes back to 1960, I think you said.
Correct.
That's the New York State Code.
New York State Code.
And the New York State Code says that anything more than 100 patrons, the place needs to be sprinklered.
Correct. And
And
type
that
of
says, that still says it to today, in today's code?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Do you have, are there occasions of similar situations like this where we've seen sprinklers added at a time, or what's
Yes,
happened at other-
Yes, right now in East Hampton, there are 4 nightclubs that the CFO that have 4 nightclubs. It would be Bounce, The Memory, Talk House, and 44 through Mill Harbor. All 4 of them have sprinkler systems, and I know Bounce, and since I've been fire marshal, Bounce and The Memory installed their sprinkler systems so that they could increase their occupancy numbers.
Trying to think. Do you have any questions? Anybody have any other questions?
They, I think it was stated in the previous hearing, first part of the hearing, right, that they could have music and dancing via special events permits.
Yeah.
And I know the list that council sent in looked like a lot of the events that were listed there looked like they were for some special occasion or a dinner, whether it was the fire department or somebody's wedding, that type of thing. So that also is something that could be done today via the regular.
Well, the question in my mind is this, is if this, we're almost 100 years of dancing in this place, what has changed?
What has changed?
Yeah, what has changed where we have a room full of people crying about dancing and stuff? It's curious to me, what has changed? I'm going to ask everybody this question.
My only observation is the amount of people, the numbers.
Numbers.
That's my observation. Not so much. I mean, the people want to get out. They want to be there. They want to dance. It's popular. But it's just got to be done safely. That's my only dog in the fight is safety, fire safety.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
No.
No? Thank you. Don?
Oh, I do have a question.
All right, one more question, Dave.
I'm sorry.
One question, sorry.
So these other nightclubs, how do they enforce the head count?
When it's code that if you have over 100 occupancy, you are required to have a counting device at the door, and you have to keep track of in and out.
Mhm.
That's one of the town codes.
Thank you.
Okay, now, John, come on up.
I guess I'm a little, John Tarbett for the applicant. I'm a little thrown off just because it appears that the town is now acknowledging that dancing and music and moving aside tables and chairs at the Shagwan predates any applicable code sections which would prohibit same. So as such, they are constitutionally protected pre-existing uses. That's no longer a debate. So when Member Berger says, well, they could get a special permit, that horse is out of the barn. The town is not requiring us to get a special permit. They're acknowledging that our music and dancing and moving aside tables predates anything in the code which would require us to get a special permit for an event. It's also no longer in question whether we did it sometimes or many times. It's an acknowledged pre-existing non-conforming use that the Shagwan Bar and Restaurant can, as a condition, host live music and dancing and moving inside the tables to do so. What threw me off a little bit was the fire marshal coming here and making my argument, right? We were here thinking we were discussing those items, but they're no longer really on the table. Between the building inspector's determination and the fire marshal's testimony, you now know that that's the town's position.
But John, was the Shagwan ever told they couldn't dance?
We have multiple, and so I'm going to answer
Seriously,
that. And I wanted to
say,
answer
do you have a violation for overcrowding? Were you ever told you couldn't dance?
So I do want to answer that, and I'm about to. I also want to make sure we don't go down and litigate things that are in justice court, right? Those are for justice court. But we've been cited for changing our use without site plan approval from the planning board from a restaurant and bar to a nightclub. And specifically, the charge says that we moved aside tables and chairs, which in 2007 in the code, it said moving aside tables and chairs makes you a nightclub. So did it say dancing not allowed? No, but it says you're in justice court, subject to justice court penalties and losing your liquor license.
What are the approved occupancies that you have now?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So I was about to hit that too. As far as occupancy goes, there are a couple charges, and we got it's not a secret that the town went around on busy weekends in the summertime and wrote all the restaurants and bars citations. Almost 100%. Everybody got some. A couple times we were over occupancy, and our approved occupancy, and I don't have the exact number before me, I think it's 112.
160.
160. Well,
75 in front, 77 in back.
whatever it is. Okay, so that rings true, because I remember reading the citation. It said something like we had 184 when you're allowed 177. So we were over. We do have a clicker. Again, this is not really before the board, right? To the extent that we're over occupancy, then we're guilty of that, and we should have due process in justice court. We're not here arguing that we should have more occupancy, right? That's not even a question. So
no, but you're here. But what was brought up tonight was the 100 occupancy nightclub provision where you need to be sprinklered. That's a New York State.
So that would be, if that was not one of the charges of the 30 from last summer, but if they want to cite us, then we would have to comply, right? I mean, we're not here saying that we're pre-existing fire code. So it's the first time I've ever heard it. And I'm sure if people were told they could get additional occupancy in their restaurants and bars and taverns by,
I don't know if there's a such thing as pre-existing fire code.
that's what I'm saying. I think we have to comply with it. It's never been cited. If you told me that by putting a sprinkler system in, we could get additional capacity, I'm sure it's something.
I'm not telling you that. I'm asking you the question.
I'm sure it's something that we very strongly consider. But it's not what we're here, right? We're here to discuss. It's actually been narrowed down substantially from when we were here in December, right? In December, we were saying, well, we think we have a pre-existing right to have music and dancing. That argument has been narrowed down to, it's really, for lack of a better term, let's call the bar restaurant two sides, right? There's a side where you have your actual physical bar, and there's a side where you don't have a bar. The building inspector is saying, and this is literally why we're here tonight, right? Occupancy is not the issue, but they're saying that, well, the building inspector said two things. She said, well, if you move aside additional tables on the restaurant side, that would make you a nightclub, and if you stop serving food, that would make you a nightclub. You have to serve food while you're dancing. So our argument is that through the submission of, and you have all seen the names, and they're here tonight, right? These are people who have lived in Montauk their whole life. They're former police chiefs, Montauk Police Precinct commanders, St. Patrick's Day Grand Marshals, Chamber of Commerce presidents. They've also.
Are you suggesting though the former police chief is acting in capacity of the town or as an individual?
No, the same way I say that someone's a former Grand Marshal of the St. Patrick's Day Parade, I'm saying that's just who they are. These are not people who moved here 3 years ago, and these are people who have lived in Montauk their whole life, and they're well-respected members of the Montauk community. They've all submitted affidavits that since prior to 1996, and remember 1996 is when it's 2007 is the date we should all be focusing on is 2007. Prior to 2007, moving aside tables and chairs did not make you a nightclub. In 2007, the town code was changed. And by the way, right, everybody agrees we've been moving aside tables and chairs since 2007. So to your question about what changed, the quick math in my head, from 2007 to it's 16 years, we were never cited for moving aside tables and chairs until last summer. So what changed? That's a good question. But
Yeah, it is a good question, I think.
yeah, why did we start getting like, you do say so yourself? So you have all these affidavits, all attesting to the fact that since prior to 1996, and again, 2007 is a real date, but since prior to 1996, they've all attended frequently, without interruption, events at the Shagwan where dancing occurred by moving aside tables and chairs throughout the entire establishment and not just the bar area. There is nothing. So,
But in the other part, you have benches, you have booths and all that stuff.
right.
You can't remove those. Right?
No, they say if they're affixed to the building, they're not being moved. But think about this. The town is saying, yes, you had dancing, but it was limited to this area with nothing, right? Nobody working for the town, I believe, was working in 1996 or 1984 or 2001, maybe, just picking random dates. So what you have is you have photographs I've submitted, you have newspaper articles, you have multiple affidavits, all attesting to the fact that the entire establishment was used by moving aside tables and chairs for dancing.
We also had the
There's
chief.
nothing on the other side.
We also have the chief fire marshal testifying that there's an exceeding amount of crowding cited for overcrowding, right? Is that correct?
And they
So
should
there's a
not
life
do that.
safety. There's a life safety issue.
100%. And the fire marshal should be there every night and write them if they go. There's no intention to ever go over.
So what has
capacity.
changed?
That's why you have a clicker.
Could that be something that has changed since over 100 years of almost 100 years of practice?
Well, one of the citations was for having. So think about someone walks. If the capacity is 160 and you get written up for 170, we're not talking 400 here, right? We're trying to comply. It's the summertime. You have every bar, restaurant in the town of East Hampton has to have a clicker. We're trying to comply.
Do you have one?
They have one, 100%. It's used.
But if it's also, okay, so what about the moving of the tables outside now? Why are they moving the outside tables? That's to get more people
Right,
in?
right.
I
Well,
mean,
so
but prior for 100 years, they were pushing tables aside.
yeah, but their capacity
So
is their
now
capacity.
you're moving tables outside.
Right, but their capacity inside is they should never go over their capacity, right? So if they do, they should be cited for that. No one's arguing otherwise. So their capacity in 1960 is the same as it is today. If the tables got moved aside, if there was a law broken by moving them outside, then they should be cited for that. I don't know if there was or not. They weren't cited for that. So I can't. I mean, who's to say that if they did or not? But I heard that tonight.
Questions?
Yeah. Is there ever a cover charge that's charged to come?
There should not be a cover charge. Well, right. That's a good
Has there
question.
ever been one?
So I'd have to ever. I think the Hewitts. I think the
2007.
Hewitts are here, so they could speak to the history of it.
Well,
Yeah.
John, how come?
Yeah. So sorry, I have to actually come up and talk. I appreciate it. But no, sorry. Otherwise, just not in the record. You know. So so there probably was always a cover charge. I mean, it's not something we do as a way of making business, but that you're asking because the definition of nightclubbing, one of the ways the three ways you become a nightclub: charging admission, moving aside tables and chairs,
Cover charge.
and a cover charge. Or it's charging admission, I said, right? But again, not right. The only question we're asking this board to decide, and maybe there'll be other questions asked in the Justice Court, which we'll deal with there. The only question for this board is, did dancing and music occur through moving aside tables and chairs in an area by the bar, which there's no evidence to indicate that it did, or did it happen throughout the entire establishment, which there is extensive record that it did.
So another statement you made was that it's constitutionally protected because that's pre-existing use.
Right.
What is the law that gives it that
Okay,
constitutional
so
protection?
thank you so much for asking. So I wrote it down and I forgot to mention it. Appreciate that. So what you need to understand is that when the town, so zoning didn't exist in East Hampton until 1957, right? They came along in 1957 and said, don't worry, we're not going to tell you what you can and can't do in your restaurants and bars and taverns. We're just here to put some major guard, right? And since that was 1950, and since then, of course, zoning has now become very intrusive in our lives, for better or for worse. But when they did this in 1957, they said, you know what, though? If you're doing something, and we come forward from 1957 on, if we're going to make that thing no longer allowed, you're going to be a pre-existing use. So they codified it in the East Hampton Town Code. So it's not me reciting case law, it's in the code. It says, non-conforming uses are permitted to continue in the town code. Every non-conforming use may be continued in the building or structure or upon the land or land which it occupies after the effective date of this chapter or after any effective date or amendment or revision thereof. So I did hear some discussion after amongst the board members after the last hearing, where there was like, well, just because something pre-exists doesn't mean it can continue, or just because they've done it for 100 years, that the whole point of zoning is to stop bad things from happening. And I heard that and I thought, oh, I didn't do a good job because I should have explained that that is exactly what the code says and extensive case law says, which is that one of the reasons why the code says that a non-conforming use is protected and can continue is because there is extensive, I mean, there's no questioning the case law on it, which is that pre-existing non-conforming uses are granted constitutional protection.
By what?
By the Supreme Court of the United States.
By the Supreme Court of the United States.
That's who ultimately decided these cases.
Case number or law? Yeah.
So you have a town attorney who can,
Okay.
you don't need to hear from me. I'm sure she hasn't memorized.
Put me on the spot.
Look, don't take it from me. If you have any doubt that pre-existing non-conforming uses are protected, you have a town attorney's office on staff ready to tell you that.
The critical year for you is 2007?
It's an interesting, coming in tonight, I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about 1984, which is when modern zoning came about. I was thinking about 1996, when major revisions to the 1984 code came about. And I was like, well, 1984 code said you can't have live music in a bar. You predate that. 1996 said that a bar can't become a nightclub. Well, we predated that. 2007, for reasons that I haven't actually, I'm curious if it was specifically targeted to this place or somewhere else, right? Because it sort of sounds specific, but it said, hey, you can't move, if you move aside tables and chairs, you become a nightclub. Well, so really it's 2007 is the answer to your question, is when, so if you're a bar or a restaurant in the town of East Hampton, because we've talked about precedent, right? So if you're a bar or a restaurant in the town of East Hampton and you can prove that you moved aside tables and chairs.
That was my next question. You're not the only one, are you?
I don't know. No one else has contacted me, but they feel free to. Because if you think about it, you would have to prove that, one, you had live music before 1984, because otherwise you're not pre-existing to that. And two, you'd have to prove that that you moved aside tables and chairs for dancing before 2007. So you'd have to be a bar or restaurant in existence since 1984 for sure, which is not many I can think of. Maybe the ones that the fire marshal spoke about. We also talked last time about substantial, right? A lot of the old codes, 84 and 96, said, well, if you're substantially doing something, that was replaced. So currently we use the term primarily, right? So a restaurant is primarily engaged in the sale of food, a bar is primarily engaged in the sale of alcohol, and a nightclub is primarily engaged in entertainment. We're clearly not primarily engaged.
But you're here tonight seeking a nightclub status. So
not.
No. What are you seeking?
Yeah, no.
You're looking for a pre-existing use of a nightclub.
It makes the transcript really hard when there's noise in the background.
What is the question then before us?
There's two questions before you. The main question is, did the applicant prove to you, because the town is telling you that music and live music and movie side tables and chairs, that predates zoning. The town is taking the position that it only occurred in half the bar. So did we prove to you tonight, or through the record submission of affidavits and newspaper articles and pictures, that it wasn't contained to half the bar, but it actually occurred throughout the entire bar?
But in the beginning of your presentation tonight, you said that the town just proved tonight that there was a pre-existing use, another use. So what are you looking for? You said that.
So yeah, so what I was just saying was you have defined terms now of nightclub, restaurant, bar, tavern. And like I said last time, we don't fit into those terms. What we have is because those are all, that's what I was just saying, the term we use now is primarily. So are we primarily serving food? I think that's tough to argue because we serve a lot of alcohol. Are we primarily a bar? We serve a lot of food. We're not any of the current modern definitions. So they were created after we already existed, right? So you can't pigeonhole us into those things. What we are is a establishment that is sometimes a restaurant, sometimes a bar, and sometimes has live music, and sometimes is all three of those at the same time. It just predates the code sections which are built around it.
So Mike, I'm curious, and again, this goes back to what has changed type of question, is in the past, over 100, almost 100 years,
yeah,
how many times were the tables pushed aside? And
so
my question is, how many times, if you can testify.
I couldn't give you an exact number about how many
what's that?
times, right? But
and then what do you look for if you're now seeking this use?
I'm not seeking a use. The town is saying that it's a bar and restaurant that can move aside tables and chairs for live music and dancing. The town's saying that. What I'm saying is the town is saying it can only happen at half the bar. I think we've established, so without a doubt, without no evidence otherwise, that it occurred throughout the entire bar, tavern. Now, can we start charging, can we become a nightclub? That's not what we're here to argue. We're just saying that we want to continue doing what we've been doing. And as long as, and the town agrees, and the town is saying that we absolutely can be a bar and a tavern and a restaurant that moves aside tables and chairs, that has dancing, that has live music. That's not in question. So we're not trying to define the use, and I don't think you can define the use, right? You can't, it's something that doesn't exist in the current code because it.
So if we find you have a constitutionally protected pre-existing right to be all these three things without being primarily any of them, what is left for us to decide?
So importantly to point out is that these are not, a lot of times when you're talking about pre-existing uses, you're talking about like an auto repair shop in a residential neighborhood or sand mine in a residential neighborhood. Those are, right, those are prohibited uses. All three of these are permitted uses in our zone, right? So what we're asking you to decide is, it was a much bigger question in December. The question is simply, did we prove through our evidence versus zero evidence that dancing occurred throughout the entire bar and not just half of it? I looked through the entire, there's 76 items submitted to the town's file on this. I read through every one today, wondering when I was going to come across the one that countered our 76 pieces of evidence to show otherwise. It's just a made up, it's just made up, right? Like, and I say, well, but it's just made up. There's nothing in the record to say that it only occurred in half the restaurant bar versus this entire room saying that it occurred throughout the entire bar. And that's the only question before you.
Okay, but charging a cover charge would. So the other side.
I didn't research or.
Back in 2007, the town board, they broke out uses, pre-existing uses from pre-existing structures in the code.
Right. Yeah, they're treated very differently.
That's where they came in about can't move aside tables and the primary.
I think
the restaurant.
Non-conforming lots and properties and conditions have always since before 1984 have been treated differently than uses. A non-conforming use is treated differently than a non-conforming condition or structure. They're very different legal concepts.
And that changed in 2007.
In 2007, all they said in 2007 that changed things was they said, hey, if you move aside tables and chairs, you become a nightclub.
And they also, I'm gonna need you on this, not now. Yeah,
Understood.
yeah, because I thought I said that the non-conforming uses were changed. Not the definition necessarily, but
Well, I can tell you that they said that every non-conforming use may be continued. That's what they said. And that's what we're here arguing.
The,
they deleted, though, the non-conforming use expansion of.
In the town code, there is no prohibition against in the town code, it says if you have a non-conforming use, you can't increase your gross floor area or expand physically. There's nothing in the town code that says you can't expand, which is in my memo, I point out, once you acknowledge, I mean, this is a whole separate line of argument, but once you acknowledge that you have a pre-existing condition, there's nothing in the town code that says you can't move aside additional tables and chairs. In other words, the town code said, hey, if you move across the side tables and chairs, you become a nightclub. The town is saying that we did that before zoning. So if we move aside additional tables and chairs, that doesn't make us a nightclub. Like, it's a whole another.
I mean, we can't, in your zone, you're allowed 2 uses, right? And you have that. You have a restaurant and you have a residence. So you could apply for another one if you wanted, but that would not be this board. You would, because it could be something that you would require a special permit use, I believe.
Right. We don't want to get a special permit to become a nightclub. What we want to be is recognized for what we are.
I'm curious because on one of the files in the public record is something called a method of operation.
I saw that was for
Liquor license or something?
right?
Liquor
Yeah.
license. So some of the questions on here, and it says, number 3, will the premises have music? Yes. If so, check that apply. And it's checked as jukebox and live music.
Mhm.
And then, will the premises use the service of an event promoter? It says no. And this question, will the premises permit dancing? And it's checked no.
Wasn't me.
That's curious.
It doesn't change, right? That doesn't change. I guess that would be, you're saying whoever, I mean, it could have been an expediter who filled out the application. It's an SLA lawyer who filled it out, right? So, and what year was it? I think it was like,
I don't know.
it was
what
like
year it is.
1979
Yeah.
or something.
The form is dated as 2016 form, but I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Anyway.
The last time you were in front of us, we spent a lot of time talking about whether or not dancing had occurred. That was never a question. Dancing's always occurred there, and everybody knows that. And you produced lots of information. It was both print and in personal, commentary here, personal distribution for us to try to get back and try to understand how has the bar been used. It's never been a question about dancing. It was always a question about whether this became an additional use. And maybe we're here now today because maybe we slightly looked at this question from a slightly different perspective. But when we go to the 96 code change where they tried to define what was the usage that would change a place from a restaurant to a nightclub, we got some definitions there. And those definitions started to apply to what looked like a change in usage by the Shagwan. Now, what coming up tonight is that you're you're stating that there is no change of usage, that it always pushed back tables, and you always would have qualified as a nightclub if we had tried to define that, let's say 30 years ago or 25 years ago, because if you push back tables and you have live music and people come and celebrate all in one spot, that's what the Shagwan was doing. And that's part of the definition of what we're doing when we discuss what a nightclub is. There are about 4 conditions here. One is about restricting age as well. You know, there's the idea of how much you charge a cover charge. And if you were, push back tables.
I think a nightclub is probably, I'm sorry.
No, the question for us now is, what went on prior to 96? What went on prior to 2007, the 2 dates that we're throwing around here? Did that constitute what's going on? Is it similar enough to what's going on now that says that is pre-existing condition?
Well, it's
Or
not me.
let me just finish. Or have things changed significantly in the last several years that mean we've added an additional usage on this property? This is a usage beyond what was previously applied for and allowed. And I'm saying it's not rhetorical, but it's a bit of a question for us to consider, because based on the evidence, I think it's slightly different than what we looked at several months ago.
So I would just say that it's not necessarily me, right? There's a building inspector determination saying that we predate those things, backed up by fire marshal's testimony tonight, and then it's me, and it's everybody in the room, and it's the affidavits, and there's just, right, it's not really, it doesn't seem to be a question. And also, I think we can get lost going down what use it is, because we don't fit into, we've talked about that. We don't fit into the current uses. That's kind of what happens with, that's kind of what a pre-existing business is, by definition. So I think your question was, what has changed? Are you introducing a new use? And the answer to that question would be, hopefully not. We don't intend to. We want to just continue being what we've been for 100 years, which is a restaurant, a bar that sometimes moves aside tables and chairs for dancing and music. And the only question, I mean, really, I think the only question before you, to keep it real simple, you don't need to get into occupancy or other things, is the town right? Is a building inspector right? Sorry, I say the town. Is a building inspector right that it only occurred in half the bar, or did the applicant produce enough evidence to sway you to believe that it occurred throughout the restaurant bar? That's all it is. Simple.
So then, from what Fire Marshal testified, you've never been cited for dancing or music. Is that correct?
Never. No. So it's a little more complicated, right? No, there's no violation for dancing. The violation is that you moved aside tables, which made you a nightclub, which was.
So, but that doesn't have anything to do with dancing.
Well,
so my question is, where did the footloose thing come from? I'm serious about that.
No,
that's a serious allegation.
Oh, it's not a serious allegation.
Well, it's in a memorandum from you.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. You put in there that the town is interested in banning dancing. We've never had any comment about dancing.
The town code bans dancing.
I think the
town code literally bans dancing, and we're in justice court right now. Was it for dancing? That was for moving aside the tables to dance. Come on. I mean,
all right, we can go on beyond that.
I mean, I don't think, and it's, to me, it smells of Footloose, right? Footloose was a town who didn't like dancing, because when kids get together and touch, it's a bad thing. I mean, look, what is wrong? Let's go back to this. Let's talk about the Shagwan. You're in downtown Montauk. You've been there for 100 years. And you have a room full of locals saying, hey, all we want to do is go down there and have dinner, have a drink, and dance. And the town is trying to stop that 100%. There's no question.
No, we can move on from that.
I'm in justice court for it. If they drop the charges in justice court, I'll agree with you.
All right, thank you, John. All right, so. All right. A loaded question. Is there anybody in the public that would like to address? Yes. Yeah, you first.
We sent in a note.
Come to the podium.
We sent in a note.
Kevin Cooper, Director of Ordinance for East Hampton.
Kevin, you want to you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I just want to just kind of back up what Fire Marshal Brown was saying. It's not sometimes they're moving the chairs. It's every Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. And 10:15, you get the warning that the bar stools are going to come out from under your rear end, and 10:30 they do. And the line starts and the dancing starts. And, I grew up in a small town on the North Shore, and I could appreciate Montauk and the hometown places, the local places, which is great. And there's nothing wrong with dancing Friday, Saturday nights. But, at 10 o'clock, the lines start and it becomes a nightclub. And it's not, and it's a safety thing. I mean, they're packed in there. It's during the day, all year round, it's, the place like Cheers, everybody knows your name. And by midnight, 10:30, by midnight, you're packed, you're moving through when we have to do our inspections. And it's the place now where nobody can remember their name. And they're coming out onto the streets, and it's a safety thing. So, Mr. Tarbert said that it's sometimes they're moving the tables, it's not. So I just want to clarify that.
So how would you make it safer?
Make it safer my thing is get management in there that's going to make sure that they're at their number. They're constantly, they're packing in. And it's not good. And the people that are here, 95% of the people are not the people at 10:30 at night waiting online to get in. They're there on Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, middle of February, watching the football games. And it's a problem. It's a problem for us, safety-wise, and it's a problem for the town, you know, and you're asking what changed. It's, they come out here, people come out here in hordes and, you know, and there's not enough of places to be. And the bars, and they're packing them in. And it's not just Shagwon, it's a safety issue for all the places. They're packing them into the limits. We'll go in and do an inspection on a place, and not Shagwon, and they'll be right at their number. Tell them, don't let anybody else in. An hour later, Buzzy comes in, and they're over. You know, it's a game, but it's a dangerous game. So, I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Britton? Britton, do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I just wanted to stand up and make one little clarification. I think that this would be important to have in the record. The area in question that was in the building inspector's memo was 19 by 17, which is about 323 square feet and fits about 20 people. So that's the area that's been recognized thus far by the town. We're saying it's the entire restaurant. We have decades of documented events, fire department dinners, St. Patrick's Day dances from turn of the century to date that occurred in those articles. They're in your file that say that there was over 100 people at those dinner dances. So if that regulated area was 19 by 17, we're not fitting 100 people in that square.
Right, but I'm going to ask you the question too. What changed? If they had events for St. Patty's Day, that's once a year. What has changed? Now, we just heard testimony that's every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever it is. What has changed? And if you're asking us for this interpretation, are we allowing something to increase that for 100 years wasn't there?
But a use is a use. Can the town actually regulate how
What
you
is the
operate?
use? But we heard, yes, you're asking for a use. No, you're asking for a use.
So all I'm trying to say was that the 19 by 17 area, it's impossible, given the documentation, that was the only area that was used for dancing, whether it be weekly or monthly or what have you.
Looking at the floor plans, I would say that's probably.
The occupancy, the existed placarded occupancy, we can go there right now, it's open, was well over 100. So this sprinkler system issue is the first time I've ever heard it. I'm definitely safety conscious as a human, and it's never been raised by ownership, but I'm certain that we would be willing to install a sprinkler if that made, if that increased the safety, and that was actually the root of the issue. But we're not here talking about occupancy tonight, but maybe that's a condition of, we're happy to do that. But I just wanted to make sure that everybody was clear that our documented occupancy is over 100 today. Go there right now and look at our signs, and that the 17 by 19 area doesn't fit the number of people that we have in your record that were dancing and having live music. And their citations do say, we have a citation from the town saying DJ was being used as a primary attraction, which is an expansion of an existing use. So there is evidence in your file of dancing, music, moving aside tables as being violations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Two quick comments. You can hear the emotion in code enforcement and the fire marshal's voice that they think it's dangerous in Montauk. And that's a condition that's been going on for a number of years now, since Montauk became a really popular spot. Shagwon is no exception, and they work really hard. They do have a counter. They do try to. There's only so much, like, when you tell people they can't come in, guess what they do? They line up in the street, right? So like, it's an issue that we don't take lightly. So to the extent that the fire marshal and the code enforcement is concerned, we get it. Like, we don't want to be over occupancy either. It doesn't.
But
no one's getting to the bar at that point, right? It's like,
the question that I'm going to wrestle with is, what is the limitation of the decision we're about to make? In other words, and I'm going to rely on this what has changed issue. And if it has never existed for almost 100 years, that dancing every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and moving chairs at 10 o'clock, moving tables out and lines forming, if that didn't exist in 100 years, it shouldn't exist now.
I'll tell you what's changed.
Wouldn't that imply an intensity of use?
What's changed is that when I was a kid, I went to Montauk. It was drunk Irishmen, right? In a bar, right? I mean, that's what it was. I'm Irish. From Ireland. Montauk became popular. That's what's changed, right? It's been dealing, the town and the commercial property owners have been dealing with an influx of people. That's what's changed.
But are you asking us to approve an increased intensity of the use when it
Absolutely
didn't,
not.
when there's not a piece of evidence that we have seen? I've read almost all of these so far.
Yep.
I've not seen an evidence that it happened every Thursday, Friday, every weekend,
Right.
starting at 10 o'clock.
So
I
a
haven't
limit-
seen one piece of evidence of that.
A limit to the,
We're right here.
oh, yeah, so
All right, hold on.
Wait your turn.
Hewitt's will get a chance to speak and you'll hear from them.
Okay, good.
And so I want to make sure I address that too. When I go and research East Hampton Star articles from 1957, 67, 77, I'm limited. They're not reporting on Friday Night Joe,
Right.
Joe Band, right? They're reporting on a wedding, guys leaving for war, come back from war. They're only fire department dinners. So that is a limit of doing that type of research. But you have affidavits from everybody in this room saying that it was not a special occasion event. It was something that occurred on a regular basis. And once it occurs on a regular basis, it doesn't matter if it's Wednesday and Thursday or Friday. You've established, and we have established, the town agrees that we do predate. I guess you're referring to live music, 1984. We had live music before 1984 on a regular basis. Town acknowledges that. So you're not approving live music here. You're not approving dancing here. The town approves those, and they're actually telling you, they're mad at me for saying otherwise, right? They're saying, no, you can dance. You can have live music. We never said otherwise. I disagree with them. I think they did say otherwise, but that's the argument that you're hearing. All you're being asked to approve is that we had provided you enough evidence to convince you that it didn't occur in a 320 square foot section of the bar, which is laughable. Of course, when you had a band playing, it extended throughout the place. When you had a fire department dinner there, the fire department wasn't confining themselves to 320 square feet. It's laughable, but that's where we are.
You're saying you're not asking us to designate that you don't want to be a nightclub, so you want the
Well,
uses that you have
you
today
keep using nightclub, and that's a modern definition. And
in the restaurant.
we're not, nightclub is something that's primarily engaged in entertainment. We're not primarily engaged in entertainment. The only reason nightclub comes in is because the town decided in 2007 to say, hey, if you move aside tables and chairs, you're a nightclub. Well, that's a ridiculous statement, but they
But if
said
you
it.
act like a nightclub and charging a cover charge to get in, well,
Let's move on, because let's move on. I want to go back to the public, and maybe we can get the Ewitts up here and talk. All right, here you go. Here's somebody.
Robert Anderson.
Robert, do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and
I
nothing?
do. So I've been in Montauk for 23 years, running security for most establishments in Montauk. The question is that Montauk's changed over the last 23 years. People investing, businesses being invested in. So there's a lot more people that want to come to Montauk. Like the code enforcement guy said that at 10 o'clock, yes, there's a line, moving furniture and this and that. When you have a popular bar, people want to come in and have a drink. So you have lines because if you didn't have a line, it would be chaos. So I think the whole point of people having lines is security. You're making sure people line up responsive. They come in, they get clicked in, they get clicked out. Most places in Montauk have lines. You can go anywhere on the weekend, and especially on the weekends. A lot of people come from the cities on a Thursday through Saturday. They come on the trains, they book their hotel rooms for the weekend. And so you have that influx of people coming to Montauk. What are you going to do with all those people? You have to put them in lines. You have to slowly but surely get them in your business and doing it according to what the law is and stuff like that. But I think just making assumptions about that's what you've seen. Yeah, because most people are trying to do the right thing. So by doing the right thing is having a line, clicking people in, yes, once or twice it goes over. But it's not all the time. You heard from Dan, it's not all the time. You didn't have all the time 180 or what did he say, 200 people. I mean, 200 people in the shack one's a lot of people, but either or. Just say from my experience in the town, you have a lot more people coming to Montauk. A whole of Montauk, it's not just the shack one, it's every business in Montauk has a lot of people, and a lot of people want to go out and drink. So when you go into the different establishments, all of a sudden, every establishment is busy. So having lines, I would hope to God that every establishment had a line, because otherwise you're just letting people have a free-for-all. That's what I would say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Joe? How are you, Joe?
How you doing, Roy?
You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Oh,
I do.
State your name first.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Joe Blocker. I'm a 48-year resident of Montauk. And I'm here to support the Shagwan as it exists in the present time. It's been a local hotspot since its inception. Originally owned by Mary Woods, then by Jimmy and Angel Hewitt, and now by Jason Behan and his partners. Shagwan has never been just a restaurant and bar. It's always hosted wedding receptions, birthday parties, afters of funerals, and the like from the beginning. Music and dancing have always been a part of that. My in-laws, Ed and Fran Ecker, had their wedding reception there in 1955 with, yes, music and dancing. There was no zoning in East Hampton then. I know that because my father-in-law was on the original town board that instituted it years later. Remember, the Shagwan is not just any bar, restaurant, or hotspot. It's an iconic link to the past, to the present, and it needs to be preserved, and as so deserves a pre-existing non-conforming designation. Thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Ecker. How are you, Eddie?
I gotta clear the record, Joey, a
You
little
gotta
bit.
state your name first.
I'm sorry.
Say your name. Say your name.
Ed Ecker?
You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
I just want to clear the record, Joe. Their wedding was in 1953. I was born in 1954, so Fran and Ed were not like that. They didn't like that. But I agree with what's being said here tonight. But the only thing I can tell the board tonight is that my experience from at Shagwan back in the 70s was Jimmy Hewitt owned it. There was a lot of people. I just gotten out of the Navy. I moved back to town with my wife Roxanne, and a lot of my friends were there, and a lot of new folks had come to town. Eddie, you were one of them, and we had a great time there. Jimmy Hewitt would host us, when we couldn't go away on vacations and things like that in the winter. Both rooms, bar and the dining room, were cleared out. That happened quite a bit. Always a live band, and we always had a very, very good time with no real hassle. I agree with Buzzy, and I think everybody in this room agrees that security and safety is a priority. We wouldn't want to see anything bad happen, but I think with your vigilance, the fire marshal and the code enforcement, I think they do a very good job, and I think we just stay on top of it, and it'll be all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman, Board. My name is Gordon Ryan. I live in Amagansett. Before that, I lived in Montauk.
You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir, I do. Back when I was a very frequent patron of the Shagwan. I'm just here, pardon me, I'm here just to attest that in the late 70s and 80s, they would often have live bands and dancing. And the Shagwan, if you've never been inside, is two rooms, the bar and a dining room. And in between is a temporary wall. It's, I don't know, a partition, I guess I'd describe it. And when they were going to have a band or dancing, they would take that wall down. It was maybe 9 or 10 feet high, maybe 10, 12 feet long, like a couple of panels. And they'd push the pool table back and put this wall partition on the pool table to protect the pool table, and people could put drinks on and stuff. And very clearly, the bands were always in the dining room. And I don't know what happened to the tables or chairs, but in my memory, again, late 70s, early 80s, it was all cleared out and it was dancing in the dining room. I can definitely remember dancing to a band called the Desperate Men. That's how old I am. I'm 73. Bruce and Bucky, the three Bs, and I believe also reggae bands would play there. And it'd always be set up in the dining room. The dancing was in the dining room.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Next. How are you, Danny?
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Dan Stavola. I'll raise my hand.
You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear. In '69, I moved to Montauk. That's the year Jimmy Hewitt bought the Shagwan. He didn't buy it. He inherited the mortgage from Mary Woods. In '75, I started hanging out at the Shagwan when I was of age. In '79, I built the Shagwan kitchen in December. After that, he made me the bartender. I tended bar there for 3 years straight. Every Friday, Saturday night, I was the bartender on the side by the door. There was always two bartenders Friday, Saturday nights. The tables, they went down the basement. They went up on the booths that couldn't be moved. The whole back was wide open. Dancing, I was in charge of the music because the stereo was by me. I played all the cassettes and everything else. When we had bands, the place was packed, head to toe. All right, 4 deep at the bar, 5 deep. You know, everybody. It's been like that ever since I known it. I have no skin in this. I haven't, you know, I'm an alcoholic. I haven't had a drink since '84. Okay, I mean, I worked there for 3 years. I met my wife there. Okay, you know, she worked there for 3 years. I got married after that, had children. But just to tell you what it was like back in the '70s, that's exactly what it was like. There was, you know, pandemonium every weekend. You know, whether there was 200, I don't know. We weren't clicking back then. But there was definitely all the tables were moved, all the chairs were moved. All right. If you know, if I have to take a polygraph or anything like that to prove it to anybody, I'd be glad to do it. I was there. You know, I'm living proof. You know, it's 60-something years later and I'm still here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Next, anybody? How are you? Your name?
How we doing, board?
What's your full name?
Edward Kenny.
Edward, do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. I too probably drank too much, might be an alcoholic like that. There might be a lot of us about talk. I'm close to 70. I probably started drinking sneaking into the Shagwan when I was 15, 16. It always had music and dancing.
The statute of limitations.
I also own a bar and restaurant in Montauk. Always had music, had live music 7 nights a week. Did the same thing with Shagwan. They did it before I did. It's been going on forever. It's part of the culture of Montauk. All our hamlets are different. We're getting crushed by fishing regulations and regulations on all sides. With everybody in the community that worked there for 70 years, most of them are dependent on fishing and tourism for a short period of time to make money. And that's forgotten about. I can also go on about the whole hotel industry in Montauk. People don't come to Montauk and spend thousands of dollars to go to bed in motels that are outdated. They come here for other reasons. Unlike Amagansett, East Hampton, the Village, Montauk starts at 10 o'clock. East Hampton closes at 10 o'clock. It's the complete opposite. It's constantly being challenged by regulations, environmental laws, wind farms, screwing up the fishing, you know, fishing regulations. They can catch one fish. You know, all this stuff is destroying our community, our Montauk, not the whole town, us. And it's not fair. It's not right. It's, I've had live music 7 nights a week for over 30 years, you know, pre-existing zoning and all that. But I'm not here for me. You know, the Shagwan, it's iconic. It's been part of Montauk ever since I can remember. And I go back a long time. Thank you.
Thank you. How are you?
Board, Thomas Grancy.
Thomas, how are you? Do you swear firm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I've been living in Montauk for 60 years. I work with,
Still not a local.
I've worked town police 33 years. I work with Buzzy, went to school with him, work with a good crew in the building department. I know they all have good intentions. Spent many times in the Shagwan. As a Cub Scout, we have our dinners there. Lions Club, which I'm a member. I would go with my dad for Son's Night Out. Friends of Aaron, Company 2, Montauk Fire Department. Bands, 3Bs, Hot Wax. A lot of good times there. I would just hate to see something like that be cut short. I'm just here in support of to keep it the way it is. Thank you for your time.
How are you?
Jason Behan. I'm one of the owners of Shagwan. I tell the truth.
Swear firm to tell the truth, the whole truth,
I
and
do.
nothing but the
Yes.
truth?
I'm born and raised in Montauk. Montauk is my home. Shagwan is my bar that I grew up in. I grew up there. I grew up in Montauk. Safety. We talked about safety first. Safety is my number one. I am the operator of Shagwan. I'm there every night. I'm there every weekend. I've been there for the last 8 years I've owned it. I pride myself on safety. He talks about 2022. 2022, the town, the fire marshal, and the ordinance decided to shut down two of the biggest establishments in Montauk. They closed two establishments that hold over 500 people each. Those people all rented houses and places in Montauk. They were still coming here in 2022. They were still coming. So we were under assault of people that had no longer, the two venues that they would normally have gone to were no longer open. So the entire town was under assault from people. We were never warned. We were never told. We were just under, hey, we better have a line because holy crap, where are these people coming from? You said it several times. What changed? In the last year, that's what changed. They closed down two giant places, but forgot to tell all the people that rented houses, don't come out here because you can't go anywhere. I've had a lot of people stand outside my business for 2 hours to get in, and they're not getting in. And I would have to go out. The fire marshal would ask me to go outside. Please tell them they're not getting in. And I'd say, you're not getting in tonight. You have to leave. And they said, well, we're not leaving. We're staying here because there was nowhere else to go. They've already waited online somewhere else. You know, safety has always been our number one. I have the best security team in town working with me. We click them in, we click them out. Does it happen occasionally? Maybe once or twice. I got a ticket for it to prove that it's happened to me. But I've been in business for 8 years. I don't have 8 years worth of tickets. I'm open 365 days a year. I've never missed a day during COVID. My restaurant was open. I have 20 full-time employees that rely on that restaurant being open year-round. In the summertime, I take on another 10 to make it 30. I run my business clean, and I run it fair, and I love my town. And I thank you, everyone, for coming out and supporting me in my business. And I thank you guys for taking the time to bring us back in to hear what we all have to say. And I thank you.
Thank you.
And I look forward to working with the fire marshal from now on. He spoke of a sprinkler system. 2 years ago, I went to Tom Baker and asked him for a sprinkler system. He specifically came and measured my building and told me it wouldn't make a difference in my occupancy because my building isn't big enough to give me more occupancy due to a sprinkler system. And he measured the building. Maybe it's changed since then. Maybe you could come back. A sprinkler system for safety, I'm all about safety. You know, it's not, we're not here, whatever. That's it. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Next. There you go.
Evening. How are you? Board. How are you? My name is Sean Hewitt.
Swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir. Just so everybody's on the right page, I grew up on top of Shagwan. Every Friday and Saturday night. Saturdays, I'd go downstairs to collect change off the floor. I shit you not. So I get a test. It was a lot easier on Saturday and Sunday because there were no tables. I just take the broom. So I'd get two things done at the same time. I'd sweep the floor, get the $2 from the bartenders, and actually keep the change. But they've always taken out those tables and chairs since I was 1 year old. And that's the only thing I came up to say is it's always been that way. My dad, back in the day, they had to make money. If it was a shitty winter, you didn't make any money. So my dad used to get bands come in, and all the kids used to show up. You know, that's just the way it was. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yep, we got somebody else.
Hello, my name is Thomas Muse.
Yes, Tom, how are you? Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I promise to, yes. I just want to speak on behalf of the past, and I understand this pre-existing non-conforming issue. But it's also about the future. I am a musician. My wife is a musician. My 3 children who live in Montauk are musicians. And I'd like to know, and I'd like to believe that I'd like to get rid of any law that says anything outlawing live music. I know that's not your purview, but I just want to make it official. I'm against any law against. Yeah, we do have a music festival that music's allowed everywhere, so let's just make that a full-time thing. But speaking specifically about the Shagwan, I want to credit the new ownership. It's a cultural institution, and I think it should be treated as such. Obviously, safety above everything. So I hope that we can work together as a town to resolve the safety issues, come to an agreement as to what's permissible and what should be done. But we should be aggressively supporting the arts in this town. And I feel that this is not, music is art. And I hope that my kids will grow up and not want to leave here because there's no place to play music. So I want to support live music. The Shagwan have been very supportive of music in the past. I remember being there for bands. It's a great room to play in. I've played there many times. It's acoustically a beautiful room. If there's sound issues, I know the owners will get aggressive about sound abatement. I think we should come together to support this institution, keep it there. If somebody else buys it, they take all the artwork off the walls. These guys took all the artwork off, cleaned the place, and put everything back so it looked just like it always has. When I was a kid, I used to go there. My dad would take me when we go out fishing. So thank you, Shagwan, and let's come together as a town to make this institution thrive, to make live music and entertainment a reality in our town. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. How are you?
Hi, Teresa. Hi, Roy. My name is Lisa Gruncy. For the record.
You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
No, I don't. No. Yes, of course I do. I'm teasing. I personally witnessed them remove the furniture. We've had multiple functions there, including a funeral for my in-laws. Dancing has occurred. Literally, I've danced in both rooms, but not on the bar, unlike some people in this room. So it has occurred. And music has been part of it for over 40 years that I've experienced. And I don't see anything that's changed. It's pretty much exactly the way that I remember it. And we have affidavits that have been submitted from such illustrious people like Charlie Morisi, an ex-police lieutenant, as well as Herbie Herbert, who ran the establishment at Herb's Market next door. And they've all attested to the exact same facts that everybody in this room has. So just for the record, I'm on board with the Shagwan, and I hope you folks will be too. Thank you.
Anybody else? One more. We have to.
Hi, Pam Mellett.
You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes. If we keep going like this, looking for a problem when there isn't one, we're sucking the life not only out of Shagwan, but Montauk itself.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you. I just want to say from both the town official side and the community side, I'm honored to be in front of the Heart of Montauk here, and I'm just, thank you for your statements and stuff. We still have a decision to make, but thank you, and I'm honored that you all are here.
Excuse me, ZBA.
Oh,
ZBA.
phone line's going.
Oh, phone line? Anybody on the phone line?
Yes, we have one caller.
Hold on, okay.
Nope, I take that back. They just hung up, so you got the town in your room right now. Thank you.
Johnny, you have to come up.
Oh, wait, just a minute. I have nothing further, unless you have any questions.
Thank you.
Ann Glennon has something.
Oh, Ann, you want to come on up?
Right. I just want to clarify just a couple of things that was said, because they keep saying, that we agreed there's music, which I did in my last interpretation, the bar area. I'm obviously not here 100 years, so I can't test to. I have to make my decisions when John came to me off of paperwork, not being in the place. And I did go off of that. I went off of, I'm not saying there wasn't music or that going on, but every piece of paper we had in the building department, including going back to 76 in Buzzy's office, always called it a restaurant. Nobody ever questioned it. Even when the CO was given in 96, again, it said it was a restaurant before zoning. All the other nightclubs had COs that said they were before zoning. And that is why the determinations have come out the way they are, that it was never classified as a nightclub. It was only classified as a restaurant, because that is the paperwork I have to go by. We don't have the option sometimes for some of these places to know what it was before we were here. We have to go by the code and by the paperwork that was in our files. So that is what we were going on, that and the fact of health and safety. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate Ann's statements, and by all means, no one's criticizing her or the fire marshal's office for trying to enforce safety. Again, that's not what we're here for. I mean, and Ann's right. And it's important to understand that in 1996, a CO, the last CO, was issued, right? So that's why there's no. Back then in 1996, they used to write things like single family home, like no definition in a CO. Nowadays, we're a lot more exact in our definitions. But in 1996, the CO was issued for a restaurant. The same year that the town changed the code and inserted a definition of restaurant, bar, and tavern. However, the CO was issued before the town changed the code in 1996. You can look it up, it's in the file. So when they said restaurant, bar, tavern. Those were just words used, and it's still how you describe the Shag One today. Like, you weren't using a town code definition; you're using a description of what occurred there. It's still a restaurant. It's still a bar. Is it a nightclub? No, it wasn't then, and it's not now. I guess a short way of me saying this is that I would agree with Ann that what she had at her disposal in the building inspector's office was extremely limited. That's part of the reason why you get to appeal a building inspector to the zoning board, because this is more of a court type atmosphere where you can bring in a witness who can tell you. I mean, that was so powerful hearing all those guys speak about their 60 and 70 years of experience in the Shag One. So this is just a better venue to get that all out there than what Ann has at her disposal when she's sitting in an office looking at a 1996 CO. I think that's all I have to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you. John. I think that ends it. Who wants to make a motion to close it?
Yeah, make it if you want. And so for Shaggy Shag LLC at 774 Montauk Highway in Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-049-04-05, make a motion to close the public hearing and the public record.
I'll second it.
Concur.
I concur as well.
Everybody didn't stay. Yeah.
I believe we live in an amazing town.
Are we actually doing Sand Highway? I don't see anyone here from Sand Highway.
What about these people? They got photos.
Is there against?
Okay.
Well, we'll find out in a minute.
All right, next on the list, we have Sand Highway LLC at 146 Middle Highway, East Hampton, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-146-5-11. The size and location is 14.49 acres at 146 Middle Highway, East Hampton, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-146-511-11. The relief, the description says not applicable, and the relief sought is an appeal of the principal building inspectors pursuant to 255-835A1 of the Town Code. Appellants seek to challenge the determination of the inspector dated April 11, 2022, which interpreted the town's zoning code and applicable law and determined that Sand Highway's proposed creation of a nature preserve sanctuary and/or wildlife habitat at its mining site was prohibited. Among other things, the building inspector determined that only the East Hampton Town Board can designate a town-owned property as a nature preserve. The residential A3 zoning district does not permit wildlife and aquatic habitats as conforming uses. The creation of a lake as a principal use in an A3 residential zone is prohibited, and the creation of an artificial pond situated in groundwater requires a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420E3 of the Town Code. The zoning district is A3 residence. The secret class is type 2. And council, do we have proper affidavit of service and posting?
So we do. Sand Highway LLC was posted actually by the town. As such, pursuant to 255-9-23, we have both certified mailings and a posting on the property done on May 5th, 2023, with consecutive repostings on the property done as well.
Thank you. This was in my district. I don't have any photos, but I was there today. I did see the posting on site. Being that it was gated off, I didn't want to trespass. But I do testify that it was properly posted. So we have the applicant here this evening?
We don't.
We don't have the applicant. So council, I believe, if we don't have the applicant, are we to proceed or what do you advise?
Right, so the applicant did make submissions. The zoning board should consider those submissions their testimony. Since they're not here, they don't need to be here at the public hearing. And that's how we'll proceed with the submissions that they made as their testimony and then our whatever side is going to be put on next.
Okay, so then I'll ask Ann to come on up. Hi, Ann, you're sworn in already.
Do you have questions for me or do you?
Well, do you want to kind of lay this out for us? This is a unique circumstance.
It is.
That doesn't come often, right? Or
Yeah,
probably
no,
never
it
come
doesn't.
again.
So basically, as we all know, it's a residential property that was pre-existing as mining. I have the original DEC that allowed the mining to go there, and it was very restricted on what they could do, how much they could do. And because it's a residential zone, they can't expand on that. So they could only maintain what DEC originally gave them in order to keep going on their mining business. And like, they had to have buffers around it. They could only go certain depths. They had to stop and then move over to another location after a certain depth and then go the other side. And that's all the property was used for many years, just as the DEC permitted. And then when it switched over, the mining started going much deeper. They did go back to DEC. Somehow they got an approval for a more extensive use over there, which is what we were saying is they were doing more than what the pre-existing use was allowed to do that they had originally.
Was the DEC permit ever modified to allow the?
They did. They modified it when the new owners bought it. And I think I might have it here for me.
So the modification, did that allow for them to go deeper and wider and all that stuff?
Yes, I don't think it went as wide as what they had right now, but it did allow them to extend it further than what they had.
Right, and in the town code, there's a limitation to clearing without a principal structure. Now, I know this is a large lot.
Yes.
Is there any, has a clearing exceeded the town code?
Well, they exceeded.
What is that, 10% or 20%? What?
I think it's 10%.
10%,
when
right?
it's
That's what I
not
thought it
a
was,
vacant
right.
lot, yeah. And what they exceeded though is they had an outline of what they had to maintain, even in their original DEC, as far as clearing goes, back in when their original one was given, which was a buffer that went around almost the entire property. And it was quite large. It was to protect the surrounding properties. And then when the new owners bought it, the deeper it went, then we started getting, besides calls, we started realizing we had the water company contact us, and we've had neighbors contacting us. And that's when it became, then it went to Supreme Court. They stated they wanted to make it a nature preserve, but only the town of East Hampton, it has to be their property to create a nature preserve. They can't just, so then they wanted, the idea of a lake came up, and with a lake, you still need to go to the zoning board, anything over 10,000 square feet or for them to create a lake on any kind of residential property.
And the lake is created by the depth of the excavation.
Yep. The angle, the depth.
Into groundwater.
Brian has a lot more information.
Okay. Any questions for Ann?
Well, do we have a copy of that DEC permit in this, sure, in this record?
Of the
that's in
most
here?
recent DEC permit? I mean, I have my copies here. I think there might be a newer one though, even, that was submitted. I don't see, I have 2012 and I have one that goes back from when Talmadge owned it. Would you like me to submit that to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great.
Tonight, or can I?
No.
Okay.
Okay, that's debatable.
It's late enough.
Yes, but yes, I do. I do have,
I mean, I think you can represent on the record that you'll provide copies to Laura
Is that correct, counsel?
for the
Yeah.
file.
That's fine.
That be okay?
Probably have to leave it open for the submission.
I can do it tomorrow if email is
Okay, so
okay. I
just,
can email it to
leave it open
Laura.
for 24 hours for the submission or something like that at the end.
Okay, yeah, then we'll be good.
Was there any reason during any of these changes that happened with the DEC, furthering the DEC permits, where they should have been in front of the town for additional permissions or
Well,
changes of usage?
I actually met with the DEC on the site at one point before these owners own it. It was a previous owner that was looking to buy it from Talmadge. And we had gone over what they could and couldn't do, and the DEC that was on file, and that it was a residential property. And then somewhere along the line, they did not buy it because it wasn't going to work out for what they really wanted to do on the property. So DEC was aware, because like I said, I did meet with them.
Yeah, but you met with them, so, okay.
Now, on that permit, is that the one that allowed them to go down 110 feet?
Say that again.
On the DEC permit? That's one that they could get down 110 feet?
I'm gonna do Brian, I think, on that one to make sure, I don't want to. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. Brian Frank, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town of East Hampton.
Brian, you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
In my capacity as a Chief Environmental Analyst, we do a number of things within the planning department in conjunction with the building department. One of my principal responsibilities has been the identification of protected natural features, the identification and delineation, which would require a natural resources special permit, and to provide advisory statements to the building department accordingly. I've worked closely with Principal Inspector Glennon and her predecessors throughout my tenure with the town. The planning department is also an ex officio member of the town's Nature Preserve Committee, and in that, in a similar capacity, when requested, we provide technical support to the Nature Preserve Committee. As I'm sure all of you know, as members of the community, many of the properties that are within the town's nature preserve system now started out as private properties. Many of them have wetlands on them. The extent of wetlands help lead to their acquisition and conservation as open space and incorporation into the town nature preserve system. And there must be dozens of properties that I have been associated with, involved in the original delineation, working with the town board to assess their value as open space properties, and ultimately their inclusion into the nature preserve system. In this case, I think it's a very clear reading of the code that the creation of a lake that intersects the groundwater table requires a natural resources special permit. If you take a look at the activities that require a natural resource special permit, they were cited verbatim in my memorandum, which supports the principal building inspector's determination. Activities that require a natural resources special permit, I can read it verbatim, but I think it should be adequate to paraphrase it. Essentially creating any lined water body in excess of 10,000 square feet requires a natural resources special permit. So if you were to build an artificial pond with a clay or a plastic liner, and it's greater than 10,000 square feet, that needs a natural resources special permit. Or any water body of any size that intersects the true water table requires a natural resources special permit. And what you've heard is the contention that the application involves the continued mining to a depth of about 110 feet below the groundwater table. It's pretty hard to see where that would not require a natural resources special permit. I also want to point out that there are specific criteria for a nature preserve designation. There's an entire chapter of the town code dedicated to it. It's chapter 182. And there are pretty strict parameters. Essentially, the designation of a property as a nature preserve has to be done by the town board on a town-owned property. It has never been done on private property by a private entity. You can't self-designate your property as a nature preserve. And even publicly owned property, there are 8 specific criteria for inclusion in a nature preserve. You just can't take any piece of property in theory or in practice, and the town board can't determine that a property is going to be a nature preserve without determining that it meets those parameters. Those parameters are cited in my memorandum. I can summarize them briefly. But I think it's important to emphasize a couple of things. This creation of this lake is theoretical at this point. It has not occurred. So what the appellants are contending is this is something that they are going to do in the future. They are going to somehow take this land, mine it down to a depth far below the groundwater table, and somehow it's going to be eligible for a nature preserve designation. And these are the criteria, and I do think it's important to just kind of state them briefly for what they are on the record. The property has to serve as habitat for endangered, threatened, or special concerned or rare species as identified by the DEC or the Natural Heritage Program. We don't have any information to suggest that right now the property has any of those things or will in the future. It has to contain habitat or significant concentrations of populations of breeding, feeding, or nesting wildlife. Once again, there's no information. We certainly don't believe that an active mine site, this is the property, the area that I have up on the board right now is the property in 2022. There's no indication that there are any significant populations of breeding, nesting wildlife. It is supposed to contain an outstanding example of a natural community as either identified by the town planning department, the town's natural resources department, or the New York State Natural Heritage Program. It needs to contain geologic features which are vulnerable to human disturbance, such as cliffs, bluffs, deep slopes, beaches, or dunes, or prime examples of geological processes like kettle holes, cames, eskers, or outwash stream channels. It can be particularly suited and appropriate for environmental education program. It's an active mine site right now. It would be provide an essential buffer to lands in the nature preserve system. There aren't any lands in the nature preserve system around this property, so it wouldn't serve as an essential buffer to something in the town's nature preserve system. There also aren't significant tracts of land immediately adjacent to it that are likely to become part of the town nature preserve system in the future for which this would serve an essential buffer to. And lastly, and if I said it has to contain all of these, it doesn't have to, property doesn't have to contain all of these, but these are the criteria. It has to meet one or more of the following. And it has to protect watershed areas critical to recharging precipitation into the town's sole source aquifer or maintaining surface water quality. So not only does this property currently not have any of these parameters associated with it that have been identified, it seems unlikely that they will in the future. And the designation of this area as a nature preserve or the creation of a lake that goes 110 feet deep into the groundwater table is likely to conflict with at least one of these parameters in that it's going to be a conduit directly to the groundwater. This property is in the South Fork Special Groundwater Protection Area. It's part of the Suffolk County Pine Barrens. The South Fork Special Groundwater Protection Area has been designated as a critical environmental area. And as anybody who's familiar with Long Island in general is a sole, we're a sole source aquifer. And part of the potability of the entire island's drinking water is predicated on the filtration that occurs between much of the sandy soil that exists between the surface and the true groundwater table. By removing the vegetation, the soils, and the subsoils below it and creating a direct conduit to the surface water, it essentially can serve as an open wound. There is no buffering. If atmospheric pollutants, if liquid pollutants were to enter the site there's no buffering or adherence to those soil particles as it goes down there. It's directly in the groundwater table. And then depending obviously on the solubility of that material, the contamination to the groundwater supply is a significant concern. So it's a puzzling proposition by the appellate to say that we are going to mine an area down to a depth of 110 feet. And at the end of it, it's going to have one or more of these attributes that I just attributed to you. The deepest natural lake on Long Island is Lake Ronkonkoma. It's 65 feet deep, 66 feet deep in a very limited area. Most of the lake is about 15 feet deep. In East Hampton, the deepest water body we have, which is the second largest lake on Long Island, is Fort Pond. And the maximum depth of that, I think, is about 20 feet. And most of Fort Pond is much, much shallower than that. So you're creating a habitat, or you're creating a feature. You can't even really call it a habitat because it doesn't mimic any natural habitat that we have on Long Island anywhere. I don't know if you have a copy of the most recent mining permit. Just in general, to kind of zoom out a little bit, active mines have a mine land use plan associated with them. And most of my understanding is active mines have a reclamation plan that explains how the property is going to be returned to a productive use when the mining activities are complete. There is a mine land reclamation law declaration of policy. If you want this for the file, I can provide it to you. But the purpose of the reclamation law is to encourage formerly mined lands to be returned to productive use, which includes forests, crops for harvesting, grazing, protection or enhancement of wildlife or aquatic resources, establishment of recreation, home, and to ensure the prevention of pollution and the protection of health, safety, and welfare of people and the beauty and the aesthetic values of the affected area. It remains very unclear how something that has never been done on Long Island before is going to adhere to that. This is a matter that is the subject of an Article 78 at the Suffolk County Supreme Court. That's really not an issue for the zoning board per se. What is the appeal of the principal building inspector's determination. And the planning department has found in its opinion that the building inspector's determination is strongly supported by the town code and shouldn't be disturbed. If there's any questions I can answer, I will. I have some other photographs of the property going back to 2001. You can see where they're also in your file already. You can see where the surface footprint of the mining has increased. That may be less of a question for the board than the appeal of the building inspector's determination. But if I can answer any questions of the board members, I'll do my best.
So there's no invert here. There's no water coming in from another source. They're just going to dig a hole in the ground down to the groundwater. We don't have, other than runoff, there's no stream running into this. There's no exit water, no running coming in any direction.
None have been identified that I'm aware.
So when they're done, how is this not going to just be a sump? How is it going to be a lake? I mean, water touching the groundwater is going to drain back down to the groundwater. Isn't that going to be the case?
I can't answer that question. I haven't seen this done before. I haven't heard of this being done before. I think they submitted some supplemental information that showed how they would have terraced with emergent vegetation on it. But even if you were to do that, you're really not getting any emergent vegetation at any depth greater than 6 feet. So once you get lower than 6 feet, for the most part, you're in kind of open surface water and you're not really in a littoral emergent zone. You really, it's unclear how a deep water habitat on Long Island really provides any type of native habitat at all.
That thing you referred to, are you referring to the PW Grosser reclamation report?
No, I was referring to
in our file, there's a report from PW Grosser called, I don't know if you've read it or gone through it, or
I have not. I don't know if
I don't
that
know
is
if it
the,
applies to what we're doing.
I don't know if that is the adopted, the DEC's adopted land mine reclamation plan. I believe that's what the subject of the litigation is.
Right, okay. I asked a question with Ann before, is this property cleared more than the town code allows it to be, with being 10%?
Well, it's certainly cleared more. I'd have to calculate it. I don't think we have a survey with the clearing on it. You could make some reasonable estimations from the aerial photograph, but if you want that calculation, I'd have to provide it for you.
Well, I'm curious because if it is, they would have had to come to us for a variance, wouldn't it? Or whatever. What would have been, I mean.
The use of an active mine in a residential zone and how the state and town, the state mining regulations and the town code regulations intersect each other are something that I don't think are crystal clear. We only have either 3 or 4 active mines in town.
Run up, Ann.
Back in 1984, when the first mining permit was given, or one of the first ones, they required a 25-foot buffer around the entire thing. So that's what we've always been basing it on, because that's what was pre-existing approved.
Does that exist now?
Excuse
Does
me?
that 25-foot buffer exist now? It doesn't look that way from the
No,
photo.
it doesn't, but none of us have been able to get into the property anymore, so. But that is what they had back then, was this 25-foot all-around buffer that had to be maintained around the entire perimeter of the property.
Even if there was a desire on the part of the town and others to turn this into a nature preserve, I don't see how it would qualify for ever becoming that way, because I'm saying that the hydrology of the thing is that water is going to go down to whatever the level it is that they're going to find groundwater or trap water. So you would not have a lake there unless you had an input. So you're not just going to have a lake. That's just not going to happen. They can say it's going to be a lake and they can try to define it that way, but I don't see how that works. I'm just looking at this from the idea you create a large hole, and if it does not have water coming in, it doesn't have a liner or clay, what happens is they drain down. And we see that happen. So what would it drain down to? To a depth, some sort of depth. If there's 110 feet, someplace down where the groundwater exists, I don't know where it is there, if that's where we'll find a water level. And as you say, it's an open wound.
But I think from a perspective of the decision we're going to make, it's pretty narrow. So I don't think, I mean, without an expert here saying that that's what happens, I don't think we can draw that conclusion. But yeah, anyway, that's. Go ahead, Brian.
I don't really have anything else.
Okay. Yeah. I know any more questions from Brian? Anybody in the public that would like to speak?
Thank you.
Come on up.
A nice wait.
My name is Mary Wasserstein. I live at 97 through Marlborough Road.
You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I just want to show you, this is my house right here. We bought it before Bistrian purchased it. They certainly overcleared in a matter of 2 days. They took down more woods than I've ever seen taken out down here. It is literally 10 feet from my property line. They want to create a giant 6-acre, 110-foot lake. I've got 4 small children. This is a residential area. You are basically, if they do it, are creating an attractive nuisance. What happens if kids get into there? What happens, and also you hit groundwater there because there's it's called the Old Socais River, runs underneath that, which goes into the aquifer, which is why Suffolk County Water Authority is so concerned. You hit water at 40 feet. So what happens to our town drinking water? I know I have town drinking water if a deer dies in it. And this plan is nothing more than, I wrote a very intense email that I think was sent to you. This is nothing more than them wanting to dredge more sand because they've maxed out what they can do. And I'm also going to say, as someone who lives next to an active sand mine, it's a nightmare. Okay, when we're in our back, we hear the machines going all the time. The bottom of my pool is covered in sand. My gardens, which are up here, I'm an avid vegetable gardener up there, my beds are covered in sand. This is a nightmare living next to this. And unfortunately, when we bought it, Talmadge had it, and there was a huge buffer. And then Bistrian bought it, and I cannot describe, I've never seen a wood clearing like that. And these were mature woods. And this area has this amazing history of Freetown. Like when I go in my gardens, I find pieces of Delft china. I don't even know what they destroyed. And it's shocking to me that these people now are trying to dig a lake, which is just about sand. And I just can tell you, this is all residential. These are all families. My kids all go to the public schools in East Hampton. All their classmates are around here. The thought of putting a giant lake in a residential area is shocking. I mean, the potential for some kid will get incredibly hurt. It's that simple. So I came here, sat here for 3 hours because I've been living with this. I've been writing letters to anyone that will listen, and it's just unbelievable. So you're welcome to come to my house because you can see it right there and you can hear it and it's awful. So thanks.
Next.
Since there's nobody left but me, my name is Marianne Bequicchio. I live less than a half mile away. I used to live here. Now I'm within a half a mile.
Mary, do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I absolutely do. I'm not a public speaker. I've never done this before, so I'm nervous. I'm glad the room's empty. I do want to say that I respect Ann Glennon. I think she's one of the smartest building inspectors we've ever known and knows the code. So I back Ann and her determination. And Brian Frank, I agree with the planning department and encourage the zoning board to agree with them as well. I just wasn't sure what was proper to speak about during a zoning board. So I have a little further aerial view than what's here. And I have one for each of you. Can I give it to you?
Go.
Just so you could see that.
Thank you.
I have to give one to.
And sorry that I was together.
Is that one for the record?
Okay, perfect. So on the bottom left is the applicant and the gigantic mine in the middle is 120 acres of mining, and it's less than a mile as the crow flies. And then you have the landfill, and then you have the golf courses. So we already have enough in this area to worry about our groundwater. If we're going to dig a hole, ripping up the aquifer, the connection that filters our water above this, it's just like, leaving open anything to get into our groundwater. So I think if they want to reclaim, whatever the purpose of this extra dredging down, if it's reclamation, it's really about money. They want to keep mining to get everything they can. If they want to do some reclamation, they should cover it up, put some trees, make it a nice little park. I don't know what you do when you're done mining. It's a residential area. I know the town can't get on the property. We can't really zone it too much. It's kind of scary that we don't have much control over this property. I wish they would sell it, community preservation and do something with it, but you need a willing seller to do that. And I'm really sad that there's nobody here because there are so many neighbors who are worried about our drinking water and worried about this property. So I hope you got enough letters in your files to say something. And then just so you can see, I'll make this quick, and I can give these to you. GPS from 1994. I have every year available.
that Google will allow. So this is what it looks like today, which Brian had there. And this probably happened within the last few years. Before that, it was just a sand pit. Kids would ride their bikes there. It's almost wall to wall sand, and pretty soon will be an open hole right down to our groundwater. So I'm not really sure what else to say other than I hope you agree with the planning department, the planning board, and agree with her letter.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Do you want us?
No. Matt, anybody on the phone?
0 calls on the line. Thank you. Nope,
you.
I take that back. One person just rang in. Would you like to take them?
Sure.
Okay. Unmuting last 4 digits. 7976. You're live.
Hello, caller.
Hi, good evening. Yes, good evening.
State your name.
Hi, my name is Dana Kalbacher, and I live on Middle Highway.
Hi.
Across from
You,
the Bismarck pit.
do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
And I just would like to applaud the last few speakers, all neighbors, all from the neighborhood here. We've all written letters tonight for one reason or another. I've not been able to be in person, but we have submitted a lot of emails today, and hopefully everybody's going to take a second look at this mine. And if anyone would like to take a walk down there and see really what's going on, I'd love to take you through the trails because you really have to see it if you haven't been there. That's all I want to leave you with because you've gotten a lot of info tonight. I think everyone's done a great job, so I hope everyone does the right thing here. Thank you for your time.
Get her address.
Did you, what's your address?
She said.
Okay.
Yeah,
She said-
the Middle Highway, yeah, she didn't give me a number.
Okay, so
Well, one more thing, did you want to submit those GPSs?
I have 94 concurrence of the Google Earth.
If you submit
Give
one,
it to Laura.
yeah, if you just submit one full copy to me, I'll
And we'll
stamp
get it
in and
into the
will go
record.
the file. Okay, perfect.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna get it. Shocking. DC. And the woman that came out was like, oh.
you're gonna, if you want to add some more, you got to come up.
I apologize. Just want to add this one thing. Dr. Sorgan, hi. Mary Wasserstein. When they cleared, I called the DEC. I mean, it was shocking how quickly, I mean, when I tell you the clearing was unbelievable. And I called the woman from the DEC and she's like, oh, the new owner's so super nice. He's going to plant the berms. And I was like, how could this possibly be legal? And I just don't, when you compare the pictures, when you see how clear it is, it's unbelievable. So I don't know if there's a recourse there, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Roy, just for confirmation, I was able to get a hold of the DEC permit. It was emailed to the board as well as Laura, Tyler, Brian, and Ann tonight, so we can consider that part of the record.
Thank you.
So we don't need to leave it open.
Thank you.
I just have one that I sent over. DEC permits. Do you want the history of the DEC permits or just the
So the old one would probably be interesting to compare the two.
Let me see if I can. Oh, I only have the one, so it's up to you guys if you wanna. I can get the old ones and just.
Should we leave the record open?
You have them? Perfect, yeah, submit them up.
Yeah, then we can close the record.
I knew once when they, you just gotta go through it, it's all in different order.
Okay, great. All right, so we have everything then?
We have everything.
So you have the 2012. The one that I just sent, the most recent one. Yeah, so it looks like you have the history of the DEC from that side. Okay, that's all right. Okay, so I think we have everything.
Thank you. So the matter, let's see. Ascend Highway LLC at 146 Middle Highway, East Hampton, Suffolk, tax map number 300-146-5-11. I make a motion to close the public hearing in the public record.
I concur.
Concur.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
The perseverance.
Thank you, Ann.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doing the admin. Tyler Book,
gonna be
is Brian doing the admin?
I guess Brian is going here. Getting punchy. You're getting what? Punchy?
Yeah, I think we're
Punchy.
just going to do 11 Georgia Place after that.
Yeah, I just need the one.
Do we have a time thing?
Yeah, on Georgia Place we do.
Georgia Place to do next week.
Yeah. What about the other one?
All right,
The other one we can wait on.
we're not going to hold. We have an administrative application this evening. It's David Nussbaum at 11 Industrial Road, Montauk, Suffolk, tax map number 300-27-3-13. It's to allow gravel driveway to remain within jurisdiction of wetlands. Brian?
I'm just bringing up the survey now. So you might remember this property as ND property. This property was in for zoning board review for the redevelopment of the property. This is on Industrial Road, the north side of Fort Pond. The application was to redevelop the property, take down the old house, build a new house. That was an approval that was granted in 2021. There is a new owner now who does not want to pursue that permit. The driveway was modified. It was made a little bit smaller. A retaining wall was added to it. The application is to basically allow it to remain as is. And the planning department is bringing it to you for consideration for administrative review.
Sounds like a no-brainer.
The driveway was made smaller?
If you remember,
That's what I was about to say.
Just that, go ahead. You can tell us which house it is.
it's you know it is the yellow house. You
Yeah,
can't
okay,
miss it.
so the yellow
Oh,
house.
that
Yellow
Andy.
house.
Andy.
this is
Yes.
This is Andy's house.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you're
Andy, I
kidding.
know.
I'm sorry. I thought I said that. If I
no.
only said it in my head, I apologize.
Okay.
'Cause that could happen.
Very
So
familiar with.
if you remember, the driveway went in front of it. It was very informal. It was
Yeah.
earthen is probably the best way to put it. Not really gravel, dirt. It's a little bit shorter. They added a retaining wall at the edge. That's the change on the property that requires a natural resources special permit. Obviously, there are extensive wetlands across the street. These are associated with that small water body that's sometimes called Little Fort Pond. I don't know if it has another name. And then obviously, the property is unusually shaped, and there are wetlands all along the shoreline here. So it's a fairly modest change. We would extinguish the 2021 redevelopment permit as part of the permit that we'd issue to allow the driveway to remain.
Okay, so somebody bought it
Yes,
and they don't want to redo it.
not at this time.
Good.
So they're relinquishing the approval that was granted in 21.
We would make that a condition. My understanding is our analyst reviewing the application, Morgan, has been in touch with the agent to kind of clarify that there's no intention to pursue the old permit. And that's my understanding that that's the case.
-3-13. I'd like to make a motion to allow this application to proceed administratively.
Second.
I'll concur.
I concur. Thank you. All right, in post-hearing decisions, we're going to tackle one this evening, and that is 11 Georgia Place, Montauk LLC at 11 Georgia Place in Montauk, Suffolk, tax map number 300-19-7-32.2. Size and location is 20,037 square feet. at 11 Georgia Place in Montauk, Montauk Beach Development Corps, map number 1017. The description is to construct an approximately 557 square foot swimming pool with fencing and pool equipment, 1,016 square foot patio and walkway, 320 square foot trellis, 384 square foot garage, and new driveway on a parcel of land within jurisdiction of setbacks and freshwater wetlands. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420, and one variance of 30 feet is needed from 255-430 to construct the pool fence 70 feet from the wetland and any other relief necessary. Zoning district is Zone X flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. Who's applicant?
That was mine.
Okay, Ed, want to go?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board will remember that the hearing for this application occurred on March 21st, 2023. We were working from a survey at that hearing that was issued in August 3rd, 2021. We did ask for an updated survey that would show the movement of a fence that was part of an agreement made during the hearing, and we received that survey, which was dated April 18th, 2023. This was the we had an NRSP here to consider and one variance. That variance was for a fence that was 70 feet from wetlands. At the hearing, Mr. Matthews said that his client or the applicant was willing to move that to the 100-foot to eliminate the variance. There were some suggestions that perhaps we'd like to come further to the clearing, but by moving it to the 100-foot and agreeing to it and sending us that survey, we eliminated the single variance that was at issue here. This was a project that sought to add a garage, a driveway to the garage on the I guess that was the north side of the parcel. Then add a pool and a trellis and I think it was to for approval of an outdoor shower. Everything here on this particular one was very close to being out of our jurisdiction. The garage was 145 feet from wetlands. Only a portion of it actually was that close. The trellis was 148 feet from wetlands. During the testimony by Morgan, she said, the feeling by the planning department was that the overall project was going to have little impact, a little effect on the wetlands as drawn. The pool was suggested to go immediately behind the house. And of course, we had the garage that was beyond that. When I came down to it here, I thought that the application was basically a good application. I thought that the moving of the fence back to a minimum of the 100 feet was an immediate improvement. We didn't want to see that fence within 100 foot of wetlands. And I thought that everything else was very close to being either out of our jurisdiction. I think that they didn't ask for a very large pool in this case. And I thought that this is one that was not difficult for me to consider. The one variance that was eliminated would have been 255-4-30. And of course, we don't have that to consider now. And then the NRSP 255-4-20, asking ourselves, is this project going to incur any particular damage, environmental damage? Does this rise up to the standard that would allow us to grant the NRSP? I thought that it was a sensible application, and I'm willing to approve it at this time.
Thank you. Terry?
Yeah, I don't have much more to add. I'm just looking at this. We had a survey from 2/13/23, the one that was dated 8/3/21, just with the project limiting fence, and I believe that. I'm not sure, did that get moved on to the new survey too?
This one, not the new one, no.
So we have that document, I guess, also that references the project limiting fencing that we want to put on it.
Well, Brian Matthews said in the hearing that they were amenable to all the conditions set forth in the TAM.
Yes, he did say that. Or was that one of them? That the location of the project limiting fence?
Yes.
I believe so.
Oh, yeah, okay, that is number one with that dated document. I too feel that it's a good project. I think the driveway is going to be a little bit big, but I guess that's outside of our jurisdiction, so I can't really say anything about it. The original driveway, it looks like they're expanding it in order to accommodate the garage. But I too think it's a good project, and I feel it meets the NRSP standards. And also happy that they agreed to move the fence back to the 100-foot mark for the wetland setback. I'm going to approve this project.
Thank you.
I'm going to approve the project. I just wanted to note that, in terms of improvements, there's going to be dry wells for the pool and gutters and leaders for the garage.
And a dry well in the garage as well.
And a dry well in the garage, yeah.
Thank you. I agree. I have nothing else to add. Thank you. We have some resolutions this evening. First one is Bill Harron at 46 Settlers Avenue, Landing Lane in East Hampton, Suffolk, tax map number 300-55-8-20.
So this is an appeal of the determination of the principal building inspector. The appellant seeks to challenge the building inspector's determination that the residence as constructed does not comply with section 255-1167A3. The appellant contests that every room is readily accessible by passage through the interior of the residence through a common entrance. However, during the interpretation and during the decision process, the board found that the reviewed each and every single code, including the New York State Residential Code, specific parts of the Town of East Hampton Code, sections 255, 11, 23A and B, which all say that an accessory building on any residential property shall have a gross floor area of equal to or greater than 600 square feet, except an artist studio, and that no accessory building other than a pool of less than 200 square feet shall have plumbing. Because of that, the structure has to be attached to the house. When you take that into consideration with the other town, the Town of East Hampton Code, section 255, 11, 20B, as far as the garage being an accessory building, and 255, 120, which limits habitable space, you come to the conclusion that the garage does need to be finished in order for the connection to be a safety, for safety purposes. The transgressing of from one area to the other, the board felt was a very dangerous situation when you have cars coming in and out and people walking through. As such, the board as a whole upheld the principal building inspector's determination letter that was dated February 21st, 2023.
Thank you. Before I make a motion to adopt the resolution of Bill Harron at 46 Settlers Landing Lane in East Hampton, Suffolk, tax map number 300-55-8-20 as written.
We'll second it.
Concur.
Thank you. Next, we have Janice Canfield at 2 Wooded Oak Lane in East Hampton, Suffolk, tax map number 300-140-1-8.
Take this back to maybe out.
Okay. Good to see you, Brian. Thank you.
Right. Thanks for hanging in.
Yeah.
The Canfield determination is written as to allow the existing basement window well and basement entrance to remain within a scenic easement setbacks. It required 2 variances, one of 4.8 feet and one of 4.3 feet. As such, the board found as a whole that the applicant already built the improvements with the error. This was when it was in the survey, but it wasn't in the survey, but it was in the building plans. They built it in good faith. The requested improvements are on the building plans, even were not submitted on the survey. Therefore, the variance cannot be achieved by some other means. The applicant is seeking 2 variances of 4.8 feet and 4.3 feet, which is the minimum necessary and adequate to alleviate difficulty and to provide safe egress from the dwelling. We did condition this determination on a split rail fence that needs to be erected at the center line of the improvements and extend 40 feet in length. As such, the entire board found for approving this application.
Thank you. Therefore, I make a motion in the application of Janice Canfield at 2 Wooded Oak Lane, East Hampton, Suffolk Tax Act number 300-140-1-8 to adopt the resolution as written.
Second.
Concur.
Concur.
Thank you. Next is Robin Weingas at 182 Shore Drive East, Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-1-3.
This application was to allow the continued existence of a one-story addition, decking and outdoor shower, 2 air conditioning units, construct a second-story balcony, a 4-foot fence, and new parking areas to reconstruct and alter the roof line. This was a natural resource special permit request along with 11 variances. The majority of the board found that the residents along Shore Drive are highly visible from the surrounding parkland and surface water areas. So as such, the overcrowding of the property on such a small parcel of land does not support the orderly and reasonable use of the property as to the southern air conditioning unit and the outdoor shower and the enlarged decking. The reduction of the deck and the added vegetation will help to bring back the significant environmental features of the lot has lost over time. The enlargement of the decking will cause additional hard surfaces that will not be able to be dispose of the extra runoff, and the removal of the deck will cause some disturbance. However, the long-term effect is outweighed by the removal of the improvement. The shower and the air conditioning unit can be removed to a more conforming location and reducing the variance. I did just want to confirm with the board. I did speak to the planning department, and we could put into this determination, and it's written, the determination, that there was an actual approved deck at one point in time at the location, and it is on a CO. So I know we had talked a lot in discussions about what size we would reduce the deck down to. We could put in the determination, which is how it's written, but I could take it out, that the approved deck on the CO is what it needs to be reduced back down to. That would avoid the applicant having to come back in again because essentially they obviously replaced the wood on it or whatever they did. So it would save them a trip back to the zoning board. I just didn't get a confirmation from the board as a whole how we felt about
I
that.
would support that.
I would agree.
Yeah. No.
Okay, so it's written that way.
The whole thing should be done.
It's actually on a CO, so it was approved, so you can't take it away from them. But you can make them reduce it back down.
All right, reduce it back down.
So as such, the majority of the board found in favor of allowing the natural resource special permit and the variances on the 1-story addition, the 2nd-story balcony, the decking to remain 26 and 20 feet respectively, the variances for the closest of the 2 AC units, reconstruction of the NAPEAC deck to compliance with the 1985 certificate of occupancy, and the flat roof height pyramid. The majority of the board denied the natural resource special permit and variance for the decking to remain 6.2 feet from the southern side of the lot line, the outdoor shower, and the 8-foot variance for the AC unit to remain 2 feet from the southern lot line.
Thank you.
I'm confused. Okay, the pyramid?
The pyramid passed.
Pyramid passed, but not by, not
The majority of the board.
Majority.
Mhm.
Okay.
I definitely said majority this time.
Yeah, okay.
I know you like that
Okay,
language.
yeah, I like
In the matter of Robin Weingast, 182 Shore Drive East, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-01-03, I make a motion to adopt the resolution as written.
I'll second it.
Concur.
I concur. Thank you. We have Andrew Cohen at 161 Marine Boulevard, Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-176-8-17.
This is just a resolution modifying a previous determination. We wanted to amend the board's determination dated February 25th, 2020 to approve a reduced and reorientated entry stairway, additional grade beams and breakaway walls, utility platform, and a raised beach walkway that terminates at grade with the remainder of the roll-up mat. As such, we swapped out the conditions. We updated the approved survey, and we added in the approved building or construction plans to allow this to occur. And we also added an additional condition under conditions of approval that states that the raised beach walkway in which terminates with the grade of the level as depicted on the approved survey, approximately 80 feet, shall be conditioned on remaining a roll-up walkway and shall not be changed in any manner unless the applicant seeks zoning board approval. The entire board agreed with this determination.
In the matter of Andrew Cohen, 161 Marine Boulevard, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 300-176-08-17, I make a motion to adopt the resolution as written.
I second it.
I concur. I concur. Thank you. We have Twinkle Property LLC at 11 Old Schoolhouse Lane in East Hampton, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-55-7-3.14.
This application was to construct a brand new 4,833 square foot residence that exceeded the maximum allowable height. It required a variance of 34.8 feet in height, where the 32 feet is allowed. And the board found that the application will restrict the view from the reserve located next to the property, changing the character of the neighborhood. The house has not been built and other alternatives have not been explored by the applicant to remove the need for the variance. And this relief is extraordinary, as the applicant is asking for approximately 8% relief from the East Hampton Town Code. And after the review of the building plans, the board found that the design could be drafted to reduce or eliminate the request completely. The applicant has self-created the need for the variance based on their design plans that were developed, and including the fact that this is a vacant lot. As such, the entire board found in favor of denying the application as a whole.
We talked about the reserve area and all that, in the determination?
I did, yeah. It's
Okay, therefore, in the matter of Twinkle Property LLC, 11 Old Schoolhouse Lane, East Hampton, tax map number 300-55-7-3.14, I'm making a motion to adopt the resolution as written.
I'll second it.
Concur.
Concur.
We have to go back.
I'd like to make a motion.
There is no, oh, we didn't do the minutes? Yeah, just close it out. Go ahead, do you want to make a motion on the minutes?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the draft minutes from May 9th, 2023 for the East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals.
Second.
I concur.
I concur. Thank you.
Then, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to close the East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for May 16th, 2023 at 9:51 p.m.
Second.
Concur.
I concur. Thank you.
Good night.
Interesting evening.
Good news.